It was the 1095th day of the boy's imprisonment in this world. Thoughts of escape never left him for a second. He felt only suffering, disappointment, despair. However, when his life became completely unbearable, she appeared and lit the flame of hope in him. The guy swore that he would get her out of here safe and sound no matter what. A genius chosen by heaven with a difficult fate, while chasing a girl, was struck by lightning. A diligent student, a kendo master with zero experience in matters of love, who has never played a single game, a child for everyone. Due to unforeseen circumstances, chasing a girl, he began his journey through the game in another world. Horrible natural conditions, areas where the signal cannot reach, angry monsters all around. The only way to survive here is to continuously kill monsters and become stronger. The guy reached level 15, received 24,000 experience points, and the opportunity to distribute 50 points. He needed to increase his experience points, change his weapons to stronger ones, and unlock a secret system. It was a mercenary system where he could unlock a warrior, a chimera, or an Asir. The leveling scheme may seem simple until the murder gods get in the way. For the first time, the guy felt such a piercing fear, as if his will had been completely suppressed. He felt like a mouse in a game of cat and mouse. It seemed as if God was about to deliver his verdict. The guy didn't understand how it was that, despite constantly stumbling, he got up every time. And whenever he lost, he tried again, even when his life hung by a thread. His will to fight activated the special blessing of the goddess Latona. Thanks to this, the guy got plus 100 to all attributes. The boy's name was Chen Jill. In the eyes of others, he was a diligent middle school student. There was no difficulty for him that he could not solve. At least that was the case until recently, when he fell in love with a problematic girl. The girl asked Gil to do her homework for her, since she would be going on a quest in the evening. The boy frowned a little but agreed. Xiao Mei asked what the problem was, looking at Gil's dissatisfied face. The guy asked the girl if he could play this game too. The girl smiled and immediately agreed, because they were exactly the ones who needed support. She told him to come to the newbie village at 8:30 and gave him her ID. Today, surprisingly, it started raining. Gil thought he would get home by 8 o'clock. He hoped that no one would suddenly need to turn on any extra electrical appliances. He wanted to play without any glitches. Entering, Gil announced that he was home. His mother noted that the boy had arrived early today, to which he replied that they had been let out early due to bad weather. The woman agreed that it was pouring and told the guy to take a rest for now, adding that dinner would be ready soon. Gil asked if it was possible to order from delivery. The woman agreed and said that she would leave it at his door when it was delivered. His mother was surprised that Jill had also become interested in games. She had told him many times that he needed to give himself a rest. The woman assumed that the guy had arranged to play with someone since he was in such a hurry. Maybe even with some girl. Cosmos was currently the most popular VR game. To play it, you only need one helmet. In fact, this was the guy's first gaming experience. He decided that Xiao Mei must already be an expert. Having calmed down, Gil assured himself that he could handle everything. At this time, the girl sent a message that she was already waiting for him. Having put on the helmet, the guy realized that this, one might say, would be their first date. The helmet immediately connected Gil to Cosmos. The system informed him that space was a survival game. Here, he would experience the stories of myths from all countries. The boy had to choose his class and start the adventure. Looking at the class selection, Jill remembered that Xiao Mei had mentioned a support. After thinking for a while, the guy chose a healer. Gil had some free clothes available for purchasing the game, so he decided he'd wear something a little more formal for his first date. A few minutes later, the download was complete, and the guy appeared in a new image. At that time, a red weather alert was issued for the city. Authorities asked citizens to turn off electrical appliances to avoid an accident. The next moment, a bolt of lightning struck straight into the guy's house. However, Gil didn't notice this at all. The guy was excitedly preparing for his first date with Xiaomei. Suddenly, an electric shock ran through Gil's body. He didn't understand what was happening. The woman looked inside the room. She wanted to make sure that the guy turned off all the equipment. Looking at the completely empty room, the mother did not understand where Jill had gone. The monsters grinned disgustingly, showing off their sharp fangs. The girl was sitting on the ground. Her sword was broken into 2 pieces, and her clothes were dirty and torn in several places. With her last strength, she screamed a plea for help in the hope that someone would save her. Suddenly, everything was illuminated with golden light, and Jill appeared next to the girl. He apologized to Xiaomei for being late and assured her that she had nothing to fear now. Looking into the boy's eyes, Xiaomei said that he was her hero. Imagining their kiss, Gil told the girl not to rush because his whole face was already covered in drool. The guy suddenly stood up sharply, not understanding what was happening and where the girl had disappeared to. Gil admitted that it was an amazing transmission of sensations, but he did not understand what exactly it was. It was like electricity was running through his body, but it was a pleasant feeling. Looking around, Gil assumed that he was already in the game itself. Feeling the intense heat, the boy admitted that everything here was very realistic. The first time he was supposed to be loaded into the newcomer village, but there was not a soul here. He decided that he needed to write to Xiaomei. The system reported that the player would not find it and asked to enter the ID again. Gil thought it was strange. It shouldn't have happened like that. The guy was sure that he remembered the girl's ID correctly. Jill decided to go to the newbie village for now, since Xiaomei should be waiting somewhere nearby. The system reported that his location was outside the service area. Gil knew this wasn't normal. He didn't even have a connection to customer support. On a hot day, about 900 milliliters of sweat are released every hour, so fainting and dehydration were only a matter of time. But such fun was not for the guy. He didn't expect the games to be so difficult. Jill knew that Xiaomei was already waiting. He decided to go out and ask her what was going on. However, as soon as the guy pressed the exit button, the system turned red, and the message "Unauthorized Exit" appeared on the display. Jill tried a few more times, but the result was the same. The guy didn't understand what was happening and decided that he was locked in there. Suddenly, he received a task called Survival. The time to complete it was infinite, but neither the reward nor the penalty for failure were known. Gil was desperate. He just wanted to play with the girl and didn't understand why he was locked here. After some time, the guy tried everything he could, but he still couldn't get out of there. Gil was afraid that he would have to stay here forever. After 8 hours spent playing this game, the guy's faith in his own abilities was exhausted. But he got used to the idea that he would never get out of here again. This world was very similar to the real one. The heat and thirst made the boy feel sick and dizzy. Gil knew that if he didn't think of something, he might die. However, the guy didn't like this arrangement. He understood that he needed to find water. Gil's grandfather once watched a survival show. It mentioned that this type of stone can be found near a water source. Gil realized that water would be found where there was a lot of shale. Gathering all his remaining strength into a fist, Gil moved on. Stopping near one of the stones, the guy hoped that his guess would be correct. Entering the cave, Jill saw the long-awaited water. Forgetting about fatigue, the guy rushed forward with all his might, leaning against the source. It was nice for him to feel alive again. Meanwhile, the predatory animal followed the guy's tracks, approaching his cave. Once the water issue was resolved, Gil realized he needed to figure out a way to get out of there. The guy decided that since this was a game, there must be some kind of clue in the desert. Seeing that the map only showed the explored area, Gil realized that this would not be easy. He decided to study these systems just in case. The guy had very low damage and ability indicators. If anything happened, he would have to rely only on the speed of his feet. And he also didn't understand what given conditions were. Gil also decided to look at what kind of weapon he was supposed to have, and was surprised that a support was supposed to have a sword. Putting on the offered gloves, Gil decided that this would be useful for his safety. The boy swung the sword a few times, getting used to its weight and testing his skills. After a couple of swings, the guy realized that this sword was much stronger than a real weapon. Seeing that the sword's durability had decreased by 1%, Gil decided that the game had too much visualization, since even the wear rate was displayed. With no leads yet, Gil decided to look for food. Otherwise, he wouldn't last long. Suddenly, a strange sound was heard in the depths of the cave. Walking in that direction, Gil was surprised at how spacious this cave was. Since the guy had dealt with his thirst, he could now look around. Suddenly, Gil saw a huge pile of different bones in front of him. Gil didn't understand why there was a pile of animal bones inside the cave. The boy remembered seeing photos of such teeth marks in books. Realizing that things were bad, the guy realized that he couldn't stay here any longer. But before he could take even a couple of steps, a huge, toothy mouth appeared next to him. Gil barely managed to dodge the monster. Another moment, and its teeth would have closed on the boy's neck. A level 5 desert wolf appeared before him. The monster had the advantage of durability. It could reach speeds of up to 10 kilometers per hour in the heat, and up to 15 kilometers per hour at night. When pursuing prey, the wolf could accelerate to 65 kilometers per hour. Attack type: bite. Bite force: 200 kilograms. Weakness: unprotected belly. Because of the 3-level difference, the guy had a high chance of being defeated. He could take 200% damage. Gil realized that the monster was indeed here, and that it was much faster than the guy. Realizing that running was useless, Gil decided that she would have to fight him. The boy realized that losing for him now meant death. In his first year of high school, the boy held the position of head of the kendo club. He was also the youngest master in the country, with the 6th dan. The reason why Gil started studying martial arts is very simple. In his youth, his mother was a fan of this sport, and even then, a woman was placed on the kendo star of the country of Kimura. This is how Gil began to practice kendo from early childhood. When he first started, he thought kendo was easy. All you had to do was wear nice clothes and fight pompously. But as he delved a little deeper into his training, Gil realized that these movements were not simple. And standing opposite an opponent dressed in uniform, your heart pounds and your breathing becomes labored. A shroud of horror enveloped the boy tightly. At such moments, even his body could hardly be forced to move. The source of all this horror was the boy's weakness. The only way to get rid of it is continuous training, constant work on yourself, constant overcoming of laziness. And so it came to pass that Gil spent all his free time in the dojo, which had no air conditioning, rehearsing every move over and over again. Constantly losing, constantly training, constantly practicing, swing after swing. This continued until Gil became the youngest master in the country with the 6th dan. In a world where the law of the jungle reigns, it is impossible to predict how terrifying your next opponent will be. Realizing it was time, Gil charged into battle. He warned that he should not be underestimated. The guy struck the first blow, but the sword simply bounced off the enemy without causing him any damage. In response, the ox hit Gil with its tail with all its might, causing the boy to fly to the side. Gil didn't understand what was going on, why the sword was completely useless to the enemy. The system reminded that attacks were useless. The desert wolf had extremely powerful armor, adding that its weak point was its belly. At this time, the wolf had gathered strength for a new attack and was already rushing towards the guy. The guy knew his weak spot, but his opponent was too fast, and each time he tried to bite Gil to death. The guy understood that if he only defended himself, sooner or later, he would lose. Jill didn't want to believe that he would die here like this. The system reported low health and the need for treatment. Then the guy figured out how to get to the wolf's belly. If this works, the guy will be able to finish off the enemy. Gil rushed forward at the enemy, and the ox immediately sank its fangs into his shoulder. Without thinking twice, the guy immediately plunged his sword into the wolf's open belly. Gil was very happy that he succeeded, and that the victory was his. The boy deliberately allowed the wolf to taste him in order to lower his guard and get to the vulnerable spot. For killing the desert wolf, Gil received 6,000 experience points, reached level 5, and became able to access 25 skill points. The guy noted that after gaining a new level, his wounds healed. The hidden level trading platform system has been launched. Gil reminded himself to remember that he was in a game world. Games typically gave experience points for killing creatures, and points for distributing when you leveled up. However, he didn't understand what a marketplace was. Having decided that he needed to see, the guy pressed the enter button. A variety of weapons immediately opened up before Jill. The guy realized that this was the very same trading platform. The guy found it unusual that in addition to weapons and armor, there was also household equipment with electrical appliances. He did not understand who would buy household appliances in the game, especially for so many levels. The mercenary system generally required a whole 100. After pressing the button, the guy froze in surprise. Suddenly, a woman appeared, pointing her long sword towards the guy. Looking closer, Jill realized it was just a hologram. The guy was presented with several options to choose from. Among them were a warrior, a tank, a magician, an assassin, and many more. Gil was even a little confused by such a variety. A cute girl also appeared in front of the guy, who acted as a support. Jill didn't understand who came up with such a helpless class. He decided that the game wanted him to stay here alone forever. The system informed him that with his current level, only everyday goods could be unlocked. Gil merely angrily informed him that he already knew this and asked not to be reminded. The guy got 5 sugar buns and 3 cokes. He could survive on what he bought for a while, but he still needed to get out of here. Looking at the stats window, the guy noted that his status was now in order, but it was still unknown how to get new abilities. For now, he would have to rely on increasing stats for the time being. Once distributed, the points cannot be returned. The characteristics will directly affect his future fate. Armor determined survivability. Magic affected damage from magical attacks. Strength increased physical damage. Endurance improved defense. And agility affected speed. In the fight with the desert wolf, the difference between them was 5 levels, but the wolf's strength and speed were far superior to the boy's. If he encountered other beast monsters, it would be good to become a little faster and increase damage to win. Gil decided that 5 points of armor would make him more resilient. 10 points of strength would help him better withstand attacks from monsters, and the remaining points would increase agility. After the characteristics were strengthened, the body also changed. It was filled with strength and became more flexible. The guy noted that it was a rather pleasant feeling of strengthening. Glancing over his shoulder, Gil saw that new wolves had appeared. He decided that this was just in time, as he would be able to assess the results of the leveling. The guy promised that today not a stone would be left standing of the wolves' den. One of the wolves lunged forward, but Gil easily cut off its head with one blow. The guy realized that with his current damage, the wolves' armor would no longer save them. The increase in characteristics improved the art of the sword. Gil was sure that now he would definitely defeat them all. The guy killed one enemy after another at breakneck speed, not even giving them a chance to think about their next steps. In a few minutes, Gil managed to reach level 15, 24,000 experience points, and 75 points that were available for distribution. The guy noted that as he levels up, it becomes easier for him to kill monsters. When he got outside, Gil was surprised that it was already night. He had food and water, and while it was cool, he could look for a way out of here. Looking around, the guy suddenly noticed with fear a multitude of torn-apart wolves around the corpses. Taking a closer look at one of them, Gil wondered why they were all dead. Suddenly there was a squeal, and another wolf fell down dead. The guy immediately grabbed his sword, preparing for a new danger. At the top of the mountain stood a stranger, easily holding two wolves by the skin. Gil didn't understand who he was, and watched the stranger with suspicion. The guy looked around again, admitting that it was very strange. Gil was sure he had seen a human silhouette in that direction. Judging by the wolf corpses, there really was someone there. The guy suggested that perhaps the stranger, like him, was locked in the game. Taking a closer look at one of the corpses, Gil concluded that it looked like the blood had been sucked out of it. The guy wondered whether the one who resorted to such brutality was a player. Having seen the warning from the system, the guy realized that he had made a mistake. Reacting quickly, Gil slashed at his opponent, severing part of his tentacle. The durability of his weapon was reduced by a full 25%. The guy realized that it wasn't a human who killed all these wolves. Seeing this creature in front of him, Gil realized that it was a monster of a higher class. The guy understood that this creature and the desert wolf were completely different opponents. Besides, if the guy's stats hadn't increased after leveling up, he would have been dead by now. Seeing how his opponent's hand was being restored, the guy was surprised that he could regenerate. The name of this monster was the Wandering Arbiter, but the system did not show what level it was. The executor, who lives in the Raknaya desert, has perfect speed. Here, he was the top of the food chain and fed on the blood of living creatures. A person will not be able to hide if the master is out hunting. Although Gil was prepared to face all sorts of monsters, the enemy's chilling power seemed to pin him to the ground, taking control of his body. For the first time, the boy felt such horror from the realization that someone was hunting him. The judge, without thinking twice, immediately rushed into the attack. Gil barely managed to dodge, preventing his opponent from striking him. The guy decided that he didn't care and he wouldn't give in to intimidation. Jumping up, Gil tried to strike from above, but when it seemed to him that the enemy was close, he suddenly disappeared. Before the boy could even figure out what had happened, the executioner appeared from the other side, striking Gil. Having rolled along the ground and somehow gotten to his feet, the guy realized what speed the system was talking about. The monster stopped for a moment, watching the enemy with interest. But the next moment he rushed forward, hitting the guy in the chest with all his might. Unable to stand on his feet, Gil fell to his knees. He knew that the final blow could very well take his life. But the guy saw that his opponent was up to something. The executor struck again, causing Gil to fall completely to the ground, landing face down. Approaching the guy, the monster picked up his sword, saying something in his own language. Gil realized that his opponent was giving him his own sword and did not understand why he was doing this. Seeing the executioner put his hand to his neck, the guy decided that he was asking to kill him. Gil realized he had seen something like this before. After catching a mouse, a cat takes some time to eat it. The guy realized that the monster just wanted to play with its prey. Gil fell to the ground again, defeated by his opponent, his weapon's durability now reduced by 80%. The guy understood that the executor was too fast and could not be hit with normal attacks. Looking at the enemy who easily lifted him off the ground, Gil thought about the fact that the executioner was a man. Hearing the monster's words, the boy realized that he could speak. The judge chuckled, calling the man weak as a maggot. Gil slashed with his sword, cutting off the hand that was holding it. The guy responded by saying that the monster was disgusting, like an insect, and that his head was probably full of shit. The judge laughed merrily, finding this curious. He said that the last time he had encountered interesting people was about 100 years ago. The guy noted that he was also funny, adding that he hadn't felt his blood boil for a long time. His family, friends, and past life were now very far from Gil, and he had no right to die here. The guy asked them to wait for him. Suddenly, his body was illuminated by a bright light. His will to fight activated the special blessing of the goddess Latona. This will give Jill a plus 100 to all attributes. The monster noted that the guy now looked like someone who had power. Gathering all his strength, Gil struck again, this time managing to hit his target. The guy continued to chop, without stopping, not giving the enemy a chance to come to his senses. The system reported that his weapon's durability was now at 0% and could no longer be used. Throwing aside the now unnecessary sword, the guy began to beat the executioner with his bare hands. Gil promised that he would change the enemy's established ideas about people. The boy was sure that the culprit was finished, but when the dust cleared, there was no one there. The monster appeared from behind, hitting the guy in the back with all his might. He repeated again that the man was weak, like a maggot. Gil realized with regret that even so he would not be able to defeat his opponent. Gathering all his strength, the arbiter prepared for the final blow, saying goodbye to the pathetic man. Feeling his body being torn apart, the boy realized that he was about to die. The system reported that player Chen Gil's health points were 0. The player was killed. The boy stood up abruptly, surprised that he was still alive. Looking around, Gil thought he might have managed to get out of the game. However, after a few moments, he realized that this was not the case. However, the guy had no idea where he was. Seeing that the system window was still with him, the guy realized that he was still locked in this game. However, it is obvious that he was killed by that monster, but then suddenly he lies here, completely unharmed. After examining himself, Gil realized that there were no wounds or scratches on his body. He did not understand how this happened. Suddenly the door of the room opened and an unfamiliar girl entered. Seeing the guy, she was surprised that he had finally come to his senses. Gil waved awkwardly in greeting, indicating that he had only just woken up. Not paying any more attention to the boy, the stranger shouted to Grandpa Ubie that he had woken up. Gil had no idea what this all meant and assumed he was in the newcomer's village. The girl didn't immediately believe it when the guy told her that he was killed by a monster. Gil reported that the monster had pierced his chest and asked how he had ended up there. The girl reported that Ubie's grandfather went hunting and found the boy there. Even though Jill was almost at death's door, the guy managed to survive. Grandfather noted that the guy was not in the game at all, and not in the so-called newbie village. Gil thought it was simply impossible. It was obviously a game world. He thought it was definitely some kind of mistake. Suddenly, the guy had an idea. He called up the stats window, pointing at it with his hand as evidence. Gil explained that this is the taskbar, the system status bar, equipment, and you can also view the map there. Seeing the boy jabbing his hands in the air, the girl asked if the monster had really hit him in the chest. The grandfather confirmed, adding that the blow had been very strong. Gil was unhappy that there was no access to GM. Xiaomei's ID was also not found. There was no connection with the outside world at all. The boy didn't understand how to get out of here. He could barely contain his emotions. Jill wanted to go home incredibly badly. Grandfather said that no one can get out of here. No one knows how to get out of the Latona Desert. Jill didn't understand why. There had to be a way out of the desert. How was that even possible? How did they get here themselves? The girl said that several years ago on the mainland of Bergama, she and her grandfather were caught in a thunderstorm while hunting for a titanosaur. When they woke up, they came here. Grandfather said that they were in the legendary desert of Latona. Even the gods are locked here. The only way out of here is to find the Hall of Kybrie's ancestors. According to legend, the part of the desert in which it is located is an endless labyrinth. The girl added that there are countless people who leave the town to find this place. However, no one has ever managed to return alive. Gradually, everyone accepts their fate and gives up, not hoping to find the Hall of the Ancestors. Instead of going to certain death, it is better to live this life well. Grandfather added that every year someone gets in here, but he has never heard of anyone being able to get out. Ubie told the young man to get over it, and asked him to let Sally go for a walk with him later. Gil was absolutely certain that he was definitely in the game. He was like a manhwa hero who had crossed over into the game world. Suddenly, a new mission appeared before the guy. Thanks to the protection of Cabri's spirit, the guy managed to resurrect. Now he had to help him unlock the seal. Mission completion conditions: find the Cabri temple in the Latona Desert, defeat the Nabolusi monster guarding the seal, and free Cabri. The reward, in addition to the seal, will be the key to the Latona Desert. Gil still didn't know why he was here, but at least now he had a purpose. He just needed to find the Cabri temple and kill Nabolusi. Then the guy would be able to leave this place. Gil promised himself that when the time came, he would definitely find a way to get out of here. The girl didn't understand how Jill ended up there. He worriedly said that she had been looking for him for half a day. The guy apologized and explained that when he has nothing to do, he goes out for a walk. Pointing to the landscape in front of him, the guy asked if this was the very same Latona Desert. The girl said that, in fact, the place where they are now is surrounded by the Latona Desert. Therefore, wherever the guy goes, there will be a desert everywhere. Gil noted that it looked like it would take him a long time to find that temple. The girl was worried that the guy wanted to find the temple. However, he had no other choice. Gil was determined to leave this place. The girl noted that, most likely, no temple exists, and he would simply die if he left. The guy had already died once, so now he was determined to find that temple, no matter what it cost him. Gil suggested that Sally go back to the city. Slowly heading towards the city, the girl once again asked the guy if he really wanted to find that temple, to which she received a firm yes. Sally noted that the Latona Desert was teeming with dangerous monsters. Even Ubie's grandfather would hardly be able to cope with them. Gil assured her that she shouldn't worry, as his fighting abilities were quite outstanding. Suddenly, several huge bolts of lightning appeared in front of them. The next moment, they hit the road straight away, causing it to catch fire. The stranger grinned contentedly, noting that the fish had been caught on the hook. Shielding his eyes from the choking smoke, Gil tried to understand what was happening. Suddenly, the girl stood in front of the guy, using her strength. The stranger cheerfully noted that he would never have thought that his plans would be thwarted by a fiery prison. He grinned even wider as he greeted Sally, and noted that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. The girl was clearly not happy to see the guy she called Bo Ban. Jill didn't understand what was going on, and why these strangers were attacking them. Sally noted that she had completely forgotten to say that the bandits would be scarier than any monsters. The boys didn't want to hunt in the Latona Desert, so they robbed other people. Sally added that these worthless creatures live by killing their own kind. Gil watched Ban closely, trying to figure out what his ability was. The guy noted that although the girl ran away last time, this time it won't be so easy. Lights flared around Sally. She told Jill to go back to Grandpa Ubie right away, assuring her that she could handle it alone. Looking at the gloomy, cloudy sky, Ubie assumed that a thunderstorm was beginning. Grandpa was starting to get a little worried, because Sally should have been back by now. The guy noted that he would not let Gil leave so easily. Ban reminded her that Sally's magic could not harm him, and told her to be a good girl and come back with him. Then, perhaps, the guy will agree to spare Gil. Sally immediately rushed forward, shielding Gil with her body. She said that Ban could not even dream of this. In response, the guy warned her not to blame him for his stupidity. Sally assured him that she would figure out how to detain them, and told Gil to leave quickly. The guy calmly objected that there was no need to do that. The girl did not understand what he was talking about. Gil noted that the word escape was unfamiliar to him. He added that although they had only known each other for a short time, he was definitely not the type of person who could abandon his comrade in difficult times. While Gil was talking to the girl, Ban rushed forward, slamming the guy's head into a tree. He didn't understand who the guy thought he was, or what he was trying to achieve. He could only deceive himself. Ban said that it is customary for them to prove something not with words, but with force. Squeezing the boy's hand with all his might, Gil tore it away from his head, looking angrily at the robber. Gil asked if the guy meant attacking from behind when he talked about his strength. Gil tried to strike back, but Ban managed to dodge the attack. Having pushed the guy away from himself, the robber realized that he had dislocated his wrist. Gil knew his opponent was too fast. He increased his agility points, but still didn't notice Ban attacking him. Sally immediately asked worriedly if everything was okay with Gil. The guy quickly assured her that everything was fine with him. The girl angrily asked Ban what he wanted from her. The guy reminded her that he had already told her many times to be his girlfriend. Sally once again replied that it was impossible and told the guy to forget about it altogether. Gil was a little amused that the reason for Ban's displeasure was Sally's refusal to become his girlfriend. Ban assumed that Gil was the girl's boyfriend and that it was because of him that she rejected him. Sally was quick to reassure her that this was not the case, that Jill was just her friend. Ban considered this some kind of pathetic excuse and did not believe it much. The robber suggested that the boy come here and fight like real men, and not act like a coward. Ban promised that if Jill won, he would leave the girl alone. A new side quest, Shadow Madness, has become available to Gil. The reward for successfully completing it should be the lost map of Latona. After seeing the quest and the reward for it, Gil immediately realized that if he got the map, he would be able to get out of here. Without thinking twice, Jill agreed to the robber's offer. Ban was glad about this and began to prepare for battle, drawing his sword. His comrade didn't understand why the boss was trying so hard, to which another noted that there was a whiff of jealousy in the air. Sally asked if the guy was sure of his choice. She believed that there was no way that Gil could defeat him, because Ban was the strongest swordsman in the city. The girl added that a swordsman who can use the power of darkness has an advantage in speed. Moreover, the power of his attacks is simply stunning, and the blade, shrouded in shadows, has enormous destructive power. The girl was afraid that the robber would die, but Hela just objected that he didn't care. He had already died once. Now, however, Gil was determined not to die, but to get out of here. The guy still couldn't understand how everything turned out this way, because he had a normal life. All Gil could think about was that he needed to defeat his opponent. Just defeat him, and then he could get the map and get out of this place. The guy tried to kick Banya with all his might, but he managed to quickly jump back. The robber was a little disappointed. He expected more from the guy Sally liked. Gil thought it was strange that the enemy was only dodging, but not attacking. He didn't understand what the guy was planning. Sally said that he would go with them and told Jill to go after Grandpa Ubie, promising that he would save her. She added that Ban was too strong. In this city, only Grandpa Ubie could stop him. However, Gil confidently stated that he was not going anywhere. The guy assured Sally that she shouldn't worry. This fight was inevitable anyway, and if he won, they might be able to leave here. Sally didn't understand what the guy was talking about. How was defeating Ban connected to being able to leave this place? The guy noted that the girl was right. Since the game started, everything that happened was meaningless. He was stuck in this game and couldn't get out of it, miraculously resurrected, and now suddenly he can only get the card by defeating Ban. It all looked like a simple coincidence, but Gil was sure that someone was behind all this. His thoughts were interrupted by Ban, who asked why the guy froze. The robber noted that it was too late to retreat even if he was scared. Gil hastened to assure that this was not the case. Rather, it was Ban himself who was afraid of him, since he was constantly only dodging, but not attacking. In response, the robber said that he simply didn't find it fun to fight an unarmed piece of shit. Ban decided that since they were having a duel, everything should be fair and threw his sword to the guy. The robber didn't want Sally and his men to think he was just beating up the guy. One of his comrades remarked that the boss was very kind today. Gil chuckled, admitting that the guy didn't look like he knew how to play by the rules, but he still remembered Ban attacking him from behind. The robber tried to justify himself, assuring that he was simply reacting quickly in a critical situation. Gil told him to stop making excuses and offered to fight fairly this time. No matter how, he had to defeat the bandit to get this card. Ban was very confident in showing Gil the true power of the shadows. Without hesitation, the guy rushed towards his opponent, preparing for the first blow. Ban jumped back a little, striking with his blade, but Gil managed to block it. The boy heard Sally's voice warning him about an attack from behind. Ban was so fast that Gil felt like he could be in two places at once. Seeing the shadow dissipating above him, Gil realized that things were bad. The system reported that the guy was hit and lost 300 HP. He only had 700 HP left. And the battle will automatically be considered played if he has less than 300 HP left. Ban suggested that Gil surrender, assuring him that the guy could not defeat him. But Gil didn't even think about it. He couldn't give up. The boy used the treatment, which restored his heart rate and stopped the bleeding. His subordinates laughed at the fact that the guy turned out to be a priest. They found it funny that a priest would challenge a shadow swordsman. Ban again suggested that the boy leave Sally and get lost. He didn't think some pathetic priest was worth fighting with. Gil decided that the guy was simply afraid of losing to the priest in front of Sally. The guy advised the robber not to waste time on unnecessary conversations, but to fight. Ban was furious at these words. He was determined to show the boy the true power of the shadow swordsman. The robber used the shadow double technique, and exact copies of himself appeared around him. Gil realized that it seemed like the shadow swordsman could create doppelgangers during battle. The boy realized that the double had attacked him that time, and the real Ban had attacked from behind. Then he found himself behind Gil again. This meant that the bandit could switch places with his doubles. Gil suddenly realized that the robber would not be so easy to defeat. Ban admitted that he himself felt sick because he took pity on the boy when he found out he was just a priest. However, the boy wanted to know what his true strength was. Since that was the case, Ban decided to let him see the famous attack of the shadow swordsman, which could not be reflected, before he died. Raising his sword and taking a stance, Gil prepared for battle. Seeing the boy jump up and rush towards him, Ban noted that he was too self-confident. He turned to one of his doubles, allowing him to play with the enemy a little. The double rushed at the boy with instant speed. Their blades met, causing lightning to sparkle around them. Gil admitted that he was too strong. It was difficult for him to parry even one of them. Ban noted that although the guy had managed to avoid his blow now, he would not be so lucky again. There was a sound of impact. Blood gushed onto the ground, and the sword fell out of the hands. Everyone stood frozen in amazement, watching the picture that appeared. The double was shocked. He didn't understand how this was possible. He aimed straight at the guy's heart, but he managed to dodge. Ban was angry. He didn't understand what was going on here. Gil breathed heavily, gripping his sword tighter. This was too close. He could die now. Gil received a bonus to agility and unlocked a new ability, Lightning Strike. When faced with mortal danger, he gained abilities according to his agility level. If it weren't for this ability, he would have already gone to the next world. But now, the guy only had to deal with one double. Ban laughed a little hysterically at the boy's luck in avoiding another attack, but he noted that Gil had only managed to hit the doppelganger. The robber called the double back, assuring him that the fun was just beginning. Ban admitted that to pity the enemy is to harm oneself. He admitted that he underestimated the enemy. The guy warned that the games were over and advised Gil to keep his eyes open. All three of them linked their blades, preparing for the coming attack. With his swords thrust forward, Ban used a desolation strike. Gil tensed as he watched the blow. Seeing the blade at his side, Gil barely managed to dodge it. Blows rained down from all sides. One of them even managed to hit the guy, leaving a bloody wound on his arm. The system reported that the guy had lost 30 HP and reminded him of the need for timely treatment. Gil was annoyed by the fact that without a weapon he could not attack and had to constantly dodge. Suddenly, Ban appeared right in front of the guy, taking him by surprise. Smiling contentedly, the robber said that the god of death had come for Gil. The guy promised that he would find a great place in the cemetery for his enemy. Suddenly, there was a powerful explosion that made everyone freeze and tense up. Grandfather Ubie, having caught Gil's blow, ordered the boy to put his hand down immediately. The grandfather tried to calm the boy down. Sally ran up to Gil and immediately asked anxiously if everything was okay with him. After making sure that the guy was okay, Ubie told them to go home, because a thunderstorm was about to start. Unexpectedly, Ban laughed merrily, noting that this was all very funny. He wondered if Ubie really thought he could just come and take them away. Grandfather calmly explained that if he had not stopped Gil's blow, Ban would already be dead. The robber considered this a complete disgrace. He could not believe that some priest was capable of killing him. Ban was sure that if the grandfather had not stopped them, he would have killed the guy long ago. Suddenly a window appeared indicating that Gil had received his reward. The guy was surprised that the system considered that he had defeated the opponent. Having given the children their hats, the grandfather once again told them to go home, because a thunderstorm was about to start. The robber also suggested to the boss to leave quickly, because if a thunderstorm starts, they will all be finished. However, Ban would not listen to anyone. He ordered Gil to return immediately, noting that they were not finished yet. Even when his comrades were forcibly taking Banya away, he continued to shout and call on the enemy to continue the fight. Gil froze for a moment, looking at the boy, but Sally called out to him, asking him to go faster. The girl grumbled discontentedly, telling the guy to lie still. Sally assured him that there was only a little time left, and asked Gil to be patient a little longer. The girl noted with displeasure that if he were to spin, she would not be able to apply the medicine properly. Gil apologized for causing trouble for him and his grandfather again. Sally assured him that he didn't have to apologize, and added that she didn't think the guy was that strong. This time, the experience gained was not enough for Gil to level up, and he still needed to heal his wounds. He decided that he would need to study everything better after leveling up. Distracted from his thoughts, Gil asked if she and Grandpa Ubie knew Bo Ban. Sally replied that she actually grew up with the guy. They used to be almost like brother and sister. Having finished, the girl reported that she had already treated all the wounds. Gil sincerely thanked Sally for her help. The girl just waved it off, noting that she should be thanking the guy. Sally said that she still had to help Grandpa Ubie, and left the boy to rest. Looking at the storm outside the window, Jill remembered that the rain had been just as heavy that day. The boy suddenly remembered his mother with sadness, wondering how she was doing. He decided that she was very worried because she couldn't find him anywhere. Gil hoped that he would soon be able to return home. For completing the task, he received a map of Latona. Now, he just needs to use this map to find the temple and defeat the local boss there. Then he will definitely be able to get out of here. Jill was determined to go there as soon as the rain stopped. The system reported that the guy had received a mysterious key and offered to look at it. Jill didn't quite understand why he needed this key. The system reported that during the battle there is a chance of a mysterious treasure chest of a certain color dropping. There are white, green, purple, red, orange, and black chests. Opening chests with this key may randomly drop gems, weapons, or equipment that cannot be purchased from the store. Throwing his cloak over his shoulders, Gil once again assured himself that he would soon get out of here. The boy smiled contentedly as Grandpa Ubie walked through the door. The man apologized for not coming to see the boy earlier. The rain was too heavy, and he barely managed to cover the seedlings. Gil hastened to assure that everything was fine, and asked what his grandfather wanted to ask. Grandpa asked how Gil's wounds were, and he assured him that they were just scratches that would heal in a couple of days. Ubie admitted that he didn't expect the boy to be able to win the battle with Bo-ban. After all, he is one of the strongest swordsmen in their city. Gil noted that, in truth, if Bo-ban hadn't been used to underestimating his opponents, he wouldn't have had a chance. Grandfather said that he knew how strong Bo-ban was. However, he added that in battle, it was not only physical strength that was important. Willpower and the ability to analyze the situation were also important. Gil reported that he had learned that Sally and Bo-ban had grown up instead of. He wondered why the boy had become like that. Grandfather just sighed heavily, noting that it was a long story. It happened 10 years ago. It was raining just as hard that day. Grandpa and Sally had just arrived in town. They approached a house and wanted to ask for shelter for the night, when suddenly they saw a terrible monster that was attacking people. It was already too late. The owners of that house were already dead. Luckily, their child was not hurt. He just sat next to his mother's body, tearfully asking her to wake up. The monster tried to attack the child, but Ubie managed to react in time, throwing it away from the boy. The monster looked at the man with displeasure and hurried away. This little child who was saved was Bo-ban. Later, Ubie helped the boy bury his parents and took him in. Gil felt a little sorry for the guy, but he didn't understand why Bo-ban was treating them like that now. The grandfather explained that the boy had decided that it was his duty to find the monster that killed his parents. It had become his life's purpose, and the man kept telling him to give up and live a normal life. There are many dangerous monsters in the Latona Desert. Even if the man used all his strength, he didn't think he could kill that monster, let alone Bo-ban. Gil wondered how terrible a creature must be that even Ubie's grandfather feared. Even though the boy had found the map, he still had to go through the desert and find that temple. While Gil was lost in thought, Ubie told the boy that he needed to rest and started to leave. The guy didn't know how many more monsters lived in the desert. He had already been killed by one once. With his current level, the guy could be killed by monsters before he found the temple. Last time, Gil got a boost to all his stats, but that monster still dealt with him easily. The guy knew that this wouldn't work. He had to get stronger. Coming out of his thoughts, Gil asked Grandpa Ubie to wait a little. The boy asked the man to teach him how to fight. He assured him that he had to become stronger. He had to find the temple, because Gil really wanted to get out of here. Ubie froze for a moment, but the next second he put his hat on his head and told the boy to have a good rest. Gil quickly stopped him. He assured him that he was completely serious and added that he knew how they could get out of this desert. Watching the man leave, Gil only felt angry at himself. What was he thinking? After all, Bo-ban and Grandpa Ubie had parted ways for exactly this reason. The man stopped and said that tomorrow a storm would pass behind the mountain. If Gil could pass his test, Ubie would agree to train him. The delighted boy immediately rushed to assure his grandfather that he would definitely cope. When Ubie saw the boy, for some reason, hope awakened in him. Now he was almost sure that they would be able to find a way out of this desert. In the battle, Gil showed that he had terrifying strength. Even Ubie's thunder shield cracked, and it was his most powerful technique. Perhaps this young man can really lead them out of here. Suddenly, the guy had a daily task: a 10-kilometer run with weights, 3,000 push-ups with weights, 2,000 sit-ups. The guy decided that this training was just hellish, but he needed to increase his stats, so Gil couldn't refuse. The guy was breathing heavily, stubbornly taking step after step. The system was quite helpful, and even provided Jill with the equipment she needed to train. The boy had not had such a strong desire to fight for one goal for a long time. He wanted to put in even more effort. Falling to the ground exhausted, Gil saw that the system had awarded him 4 skill points for completing the task. The guy wondered what he should improve this time. Considering that Gil can heal himself and his defense skills are pretty good, Gil decided to spend 2 points on intelligence and 2 on stamina. The girl called out loudly to the guy, running towards him as fast as she could. Gil asked what was wrong. Sally explained that she wanted to bring him breakfast, but Gil was not home. Grandpa told her that the boy might be here. Seeing that the guy was shirtless, Sally assumed that he was training. Gil explained that Ubie's grandfather had agreed to teach him, so he came to train to prepare for his training. Sally was very surprised by the news that Ubie's grandfather agreed to train the boy. The girl considered this wonderful news. She couldn't wait to see what abilities would awaken in Gil. The guy didn't understand what she was talking about. He was a priest. What other abilities could he have? Sally explained that the priest was just his class, the occupation the gods had chosen for him. And elemental abilities weren't given to you. They manifested based on your own skills. For example, the girl had the power of fire, Grandpa Ubie had the power of thunder, Bo Ban had the power of shadow. Each person had their own abilities. The class only gives direction for development, and the abilities themselves are directly related to your combat skills. Hearing all this, Gil also became curious about what abilities would awaken in him. Sally revealed that she lived on the continent of Polises, one of the 5 continents of her home world. This continent was inhabited by humans, but was distinguished by the fact that it had many craft workshops, which allowed trade to flourish. To the west of Polises lies Megara, the homeland of the dragon riders, often covered in smoke and ash from the volcanic eruptions that dot the continent. In the north is Xanthid, a kingdom of eternal winter. Giants and bloodthirsty beasts live there, guarding the deposits of valuable minerals that this continent is rich in. To the east is Bergama, a continent covered in dense forests that hide huge, ferocious monsters. The neighboring elves wield ancient magic. To the south lies Kubitek, or the edge of the land. There live the gnomes. The products that come out of the blacksmith's hammers are valued all over the world. Legend has it that Kubitek is washed by an endless sea. If you cross it, you can get to the abode of the gods and gain unlimited power. Previously, the girl thought that the story about the endless sea and the abode of the gods was just a legend. But when she got here, she realized that it was all true. Gil noted that this meant that finding the temple and leaving the Latona desert was possible. He promised Sally that they would definitely get out of here. Grandfather was surprised to see the boys. He did not expect them to wake up before him. Ubie asked if the girl had finished explaining her feelings to the guy, to which Sally hastened to assure him that the man was talking complete nonsense. Looking at Gil, Grandpa asked if he was ready to pass the test. The guy resolutely replied that he was completely ready for this. At the very beginning, when chaos reigned everywhere, the gods populated this world with different peoples. They gave each creature its purpose and divided them into classes. And the only thing that unites this world is that everything consists of elements. But these are not only the elements that can be seen or touched, such as water, fire, lightning, earth, wood. There are also elements that can be seen but not touched. For example, light or darkness. To master the power of the elements, you must first learn to feel them. Grandfather explained that the boy must feel the elemental flow, sense the essence of the elements. Having created a portal, Ubie said that with its help, they would be able to move directly to the lair of the monsters. He found this place by chance during a hunt. He pointed to his sword, the Etzel, which had served him faithfully for decades. Ubie had fed it blood in many battles. In 3 days, the man would open the portal again. During that time, Gil had to kill the monster king with the sword and bring him his head. If he succeeded, he could consider the test passed. Grandfather reminded him that only by awakening his elemental abilities would he be able to use the true power of this sword and kill the king of monsters. However, he warned that if Gil went there, he might never come back. This was the boy's last chance to change his mind. Taking the offered sword, Gil firmly stated that he would not change his mind. The guy assured that he would definitely return with the severed head of the king of the monsters. The system asked the guy to confirm the activation of the quest, Awakening the King of Monsters. Gil immediately confirmed the task. The system noted that he had 72 hours to complete it. Ubie knew that these monsters had well-developed defensive capabilities. Without the power of the elements, it would be impossible to kill their king. Gil's power would only awaken if he found himself in mortal danger. Coming out of the portal, Gil looked around, not believing that this was the right location. It was completely different from the place he had originally found himself in. Looking around, Gil was surprised that the sand was somehow black, and the sun was not visible at all. The guy also caught a strange smell that confused him a little. Gil knew he had to come up with a plan first. He had to find the monsters. With the guy's current level, it would be difficult for him to defeat the boss. First, he had to kill several mobs to raise his level. After thinking for a while, Gil decided it was time to start searching. Suddenly, a blow flew at the guy. Managing to react in time, he jumped to the side. Gil did not understand how he was noticed so quickly. A level 20.M appeared before the boy. It was the most mysterious monster in the Latona Desert. Gil decided that he could kill monsters with this sword without elemental abilities. He himself decides how to use it. The boy realized that it was time to try the sword. Gil has been steadily gaining combat experience, so he is no longer the rookie he once was. No matter what enemy he had to face, there was no longer any fear in the boy's heart. It was replaced by a fighting spirit. G only thought that by killing this monster, he could level up. He would constantly become stronger. With each blow, the boy felt an intoxicating sense of victory. He felt himself becoming stronger. Gil thrust his sword into the monster up to the hilt and cut his enemy in two with one blow. The system reported that Gil had reached level 17. He received 3,500 experience points and 5 points for distribution. Turning around, the guy saw a whole horde of new monsters heading towards him. As he dealt blow after blow, the boy thought it was not enough. He was still too weak. Ban considered it impossible. He did not understand how he could lose to a priest. Some pathetic priest with no elemental abilities was about to deliver such a powerful blow that even he became afraid. The boy didn't remember Ubie ever using that technique. Even he had a hard time holding back that blow. Ban didn't understand who the hell this Gil was. The guy continued to kill each datum one after another, increasing his level with each kill. By the end of the fight, Gil had reached level 25. He had 45 points available for distribution, as well as the ability to unlock access to medicines. The system asked if the guy wanted to unlock the medicines for 15 levels. Gil thought it was a very difficult choice. He had worked so hard to level up, and they were asking him to give up 15 levels to get access to the medicine. Gil decided that since you buy goods for levels here, it was logical that the higher the level, the harder it would be to raise it. And if he wanted to buy something later, he would have to spend a fortune. The guy figured that to unlock everything, including mercenaries, he would need as many as 300 levels. Gil decided that he would first accumulate enough levels to unlock the most expensive sections. However, he would need to kill the king of the beasts. For now, he decided to spend the levels on medicines to make sure he survived. The following medicines became available: restorative, strengthening, skill-enhancing, and acceleration. The recovery medicine cost 8 levels, instantly restored 50% of HP. The special medicine cost 10 levels, increased attack power by 300%. As Gil expected, the effectiveness of the medicine depends on the amount of HP and its strength. In other words, the higher its ability, the stronger the restorative properties of the medicine. If Gil has 10,000 HP, then within 10 seconds, he will be able to restore as much as 8,000 HP. This is almost the same as completely restoring his health, which means no one will be able to kill the guy. After buying all the necessary medicines, Gil only had 2 levels left. He literally had 2 lives left, but he had quite a lot of health. The guy spent too much energy to kill this monster. He needed to buy something to eat at the marketplace. Gil chose baguettes with the effect of reducing hunger. An additional effect was also a decrease in the feeling of hunger. After trying them, Gil noted that the baguettes were quite hard. They were not comparable to Sally's buns. Gil realized that about 12 hours had passed, which meant he had 60 hours left to complete the task. Grandpa Ubie said that the monster's lair was in the northwest. The boy just had to follow the map. The system reminded Gil that he had 45 points left to distribute. The guy had completely forgotten about them and was now wondering how he could distribute them correctly. Last time he pumped up his strength and agility quite well, but it would be good to increase his armor and increase the amount of MP. If he gets any ability that uses MP, the lack of mana could limit the damage. Also, if Gil's health is too low during the battle, it will be harder for him to fight. A monster that is too strong can kill him with 1 hit. Gil was reminded of the entrance exams at university. To get high marks, you need to know math, chemistry, and a foreign language well. However, the difference was that you only have to take the exams once. But Gil could constantly receive new abilities. He only needed to constantly increase different characteristics, so the guy could achieve the maximum effect. Gil decided to spend 15 points on armor, 15 on strength, and the remaining 15 he distributed as follows: 5 each on defensive abilities, agility, and magic. Now the guy just had to find the monster's lair, and then he would pass this test. Sally was worried about the boy, wondering if he would be okay, since his grandfather had let him go alone to such a dangerous place. Ubie assured the girl that she need not worry, because he had left a magical mark on the sword. If Gil was in danger, her grandfather would come to his aid. Sally still didn't understand why Grandpa sent the boy to the monster's lair in the first place, and why he never told her that he was there. Ubie explained that he had simply found the place by chance while hunting, that was all. Having said that he needed to go to the city, Ubie asked Sally to prepare something to eat for his return. The girl realized that this was just another way to avoid the conversation. Grandpa knew he couldn't stop Gil anyway. He wanted to get out of here so badly. Maybe if he saw these monsters with his own eyes and faced the harsh reality of this world, he would finally give up on this idea. Ubie knew he had given the boy an impossible task, but for some reason, deep down, he hoped that Gil would be able to bring back the head of the king of the monsters. Then people will believe that the guy is none other than a god who is capable of leading them out of here. After 3 hours of wandering, Gil decided that the lair must be very close. Suddenly he heard a woman screaming. She was running, clutching a child to her chest and desperately asking someone to help them. Gil didn't understand where the woman and child came from, how they got here. Approaching the stranger, the guy assured her that they no longer had to be afraid and asked what had happened. The woman pointed ahead, saying that there were monsters there. She desperately asked the boy to save them. Latona's beast-like monsters possess incredible destructive power and a huge amount of HP. However, they were clumsy tanks. Desert Orc Rahidler, level 40. Subjugates a Latona creature with low intelligence. Can summon and control large desert monsters and direct their attacks. His level was much higher than the monsters Gil had already fought, and he also had monsters with the same intelligence as those bandits. But there was good news in all this. The appearance of an orc could mean that the lair of the monsters was very close. However, Gil still didn't understand how the woman and child had gotten here in the first place. He assumed that perhaps, like him, they had used a teleporter. The orc told his minions to prepare for a good snack. The monster ordered them to tear these insignificant worms into small pieces. He was glad to begin the bloody feast. Gil was the first to rush forward, starting to strike one after another with his sword. The woman watched the fight with alarm, hiding behind a rock. Gil noted that after leveling up, he became much stronger. Seeing the boy slaying one monster after another, the orc immediately and angrily ordered the rest of his minions not to stand still, but to finish him off right now. However, seeing his slain relatives, the monster ran away from here as fast as he could. The orc was extremely unhappy with all this, shouting after them that he was just useless trash. He assured them that he could handle it himself and offered to watch how he dealt with the guy alone. However, he didn't even have time to move when Gil put his sword to his throat. The guy advised the orc to drop the club and not to twitch if he didn't want to lose his head. The guy asked why the monster was chasing these two. The orc said that he was a faithful servant of the god of these lands, and if the guy killed him, he would be punished by God. Instead of answering, Gil hit the orc in the face with all his might, causing him to whine in pain. Gil warned that next time he would hit with a blade and ordered to tell where the monster's lair was. Without thinking for long, the orc pointed in the right direction. Gil guessed that the monster was telling the truth. It looked like the place marked on the map. The lair must be on that black mountain. While Gil was distracted by the mountain, the orc managed to jump down to the woman and child. The monster laughed at the fact that the guy wanted to protect these two and invited him to watch carefully as he twisted their little necks and sucked all the blood out of them. The orc was now determined to show his enemy his true strength. However, before the monster had time to figure it out, Jill and another stranger rushed towards him. They struck simultaneously from both sides, hitting him right in the face. Gil frowned as he noticed the stranger who had suddenly appeared. The guy just smiled, admitting that Gil was pretty good. Seeing the others approaching, Gil asked who they were and how they got there. The guy said that 3 days ago, he and the guys suddenly appeared here. Almost immediately, they were attacked by orcs. During the battle, an orc took their comrade. The guy followed his tracks and unexpectedly met Gil. The guy introduced himself as Bruce, and that he was a warrior. He also introduced his companions. The guy's name was Philoja, and he was an assassin. And the girl, Rachel, was a healer. In response, the guy said that his name was Chen Jill, but they could just call him Jill. Bruce asked if Jill knew by any chance why they suddenly moved here. The guy apologized and said that he didn't know anything either. But, looking at the beaten orc, he assumed that he might know something. The orc was not pleased that he had been attacked so unexpectedly. He considered these insignificant creatures to be very cunning. The monster promised that sooner or later he would kill them all. Noticing that all the guys had approached him, the monster immediately became frightened and asked what they were up to. He immediately began to argue that they had no right to treat God so disrespectfully and attack his servant. After all, they were just pathetic insects, fit only to become someone's dinner. Hearing the boy call him Rahidler, the orc was surprised that he knew his name. Kneeling down in front of the orc, Gil said he had a couple of questions for the monster. The guy advised me to be a good boy and tell him everything if the orc didn't want to die. The monster continued to insist that he was telling the truth and asked them to believe him. He claimed that he had told them everything he knew. The orc said that he didn't have a very high status in the tribe, so he didn't know anything else. Their god sent them here to be their food. The orc simply followed the god's will and guarded this territory. Ubie came to the city of Dirks, to a huge temple with high spires. The man believed that even though so many years had passed, Grandfather Ubie was still just as naive. Even if the guy can find this temple, they still won't be able to defeat its guards. Hicks, a mage who possessed the power of wind, was surprised that Ubie relied on a boy who didn't even have elemental abilities. Besides, the man knew what would happen if he incurred the wrath of God. The civilians would be in danger. Hicks suggested that he go to the monster's lair and kill the boy, and then Ubie had to repent of his sins before God and beg for his forgiveness. Ubie thought it was funny. It turned out that for their god, they were just insects that could be killed whenever they wanted, to give the lives of unsuspecting comrades in exchange for what they call peace. And yet, the people consider them heroes. Ubie noted that Hicks was excellent at passing off his shortcomings as his strengths and moving forward without looking back at the cemetery he left behind. The man was outraged by Grandfather Ubie's words and immediately called upon his magic. The man was now determined to punish his grandfather instead of their god. Without moving from his spot, Ubie calmly summoned a thunder shield, not allowing the enemy's magic to even touch him. Grandpa said he wasn't satisfied with a world built on the bones of others. He was going to take up arms again and continue looking for a way to get out of here and protect all these innocent people. Ubie was also determined to stand against the one they called a god. Hicks warned his grandfather not to underestimate him. A man in a cloak sitting nearby told Hicks to stop now, noting that that was enough. These people were sent to Latona to feed the local monsters. If you look at the situation from the point of view of an ordinary player who does not care about NPCs, then this is just part of the game's lore. But here, Gil met Grandpa Ubie, Sally, and these guys. And now he knew that he could no longer perceive this as a game. They all became living people for him, not some NPCs that could be sacrificed for fun. Gil couldn't stay away. He had to find the Temple of Khepri and get everyone out of here. Gil remembered that he had once read a book in the library and learned that Khepri was one of the hypostases of the god Ra, the strongest of the great Ennead of Egypt. However, he did not understand why such a strong god was locked up here. Rahidler said that he was ordered to guard this place. Gil thought that the Temple of Khepri was near the lair of the monsters, but then he realized that the temple was on the other side. But what was the orc guarding then? Was there another god locked up here? Bruce distracted the boy from his thoughts by telling him that they were ready and able to move into the monster's lair. It was unknown what kind of monsters they would have to face on the way to that lair. It was still relatively safe here. Bruce informed her that Rachel was a healer. She could also create a magical barrier and enhance elemental abilities, so let her stay here and take care of these two. Rachel immediately agreed, assuring them that she could protect them and would wait for the others to return. Bruce suggested not to delay and to go to the monster's lair right away. The orc immediately advised them not to go there because they would simply be eaten by stronger orcs. Jill decided that the monster was simply afraid that he would be eaten there along with them. The orc was offended by this suggestion. He declared that he, Rahidler, was not some kind of coward. Having pulled the rope, Bruce then told him to go and not waste their time talking. The orc continued to shout that they were simply tired of living and were looking for their death. The orcs walked inside, carrying on their shoulders a huge cage with people sitting in it. Kneeling before the chief, they reported that this was all they had managed to catch today, and they were awaiting further instructions. Suddenly, a wind swept through the room, and all the orcs were immediately covered in a crust of ice. The man said that he was the great magician Ngom. He assured that people should not be afraid, because he would get them out of here. The man suggested that if there were other heroes here, they should unite and kill these monsters. Ngom was unhappy that so many innocent people had died here because of the chief. He considered it unforgivable. Having gathered all his magic, the man promised that the monster would definitely pay for this. The mage summoned blades of ice storm, directing them towards the chieftain sitting on the throne. However, the shield that surrounded the monster prevented any blade from touching it. Ngom didn't understand how this was possible. Suddenly, the enemy's magic enveloped his body, lifting the mage into the air. The man didn't understand what was happening. Without saying a word, the leader sent a bolt of lightning at the magician. The next moment, the man's body exploded in the air, shattering into tiny pieces. Such was the strength of the magic of the king of monsters, the leader of the 85th level orcs, Fenner. The boys rushed at the monsters one after another. The orc was shocked to see all this. He couldn't help but admit that they were quite strong. The monster also noted that Gil had become much stronger since their first meeting. The guy noted that the closer they were to the lair, the more monsters there were around and the stronger they became. Even though Gil has used up all his levels, experience continues to accumulate according to the level he had before. These monsters were quite strong, but the boy still felt that the experience bar was filling up very slowly. He knew that he needed to speed up somehow. Bruce decided that Gil was so gloomy because he was not used to fighting so much. The boy noted that although they were slow, they were not so easy to kill. However, this was the first time he had seen a person who could deal with monsters so easily, even without using elemental abilities. Bruce was sure that it was not by chance that he met Gil. The guy noted that he liked Gil and invited him to join his squad if they got out of here. Gil was a little surprised to hear that the guy had a squad of them. Bruce said that they had plenty of mature beauties with gorgeous shapes there. He promised to introduce the guy to someone absolutely free. Bruce assumed that Gil also liked older women. Feloja recalled how Bruce had told him that there was no one else in this squad except him. The guy immediately waved him off, saying that he was talking too much and said that it was time for them to go. Pointing ahead, Feloja said that there should be an entrance to the monster's lair there. Jill immediately turned to Rahidler, asking if it was really here. However, instead of the orc, only a cut rope remained. While they were fighting, the orc managed to get out and escape from them. Rahidler only thought that he had to report to the chieftain as soon as possible that the humans had invaded their territory. Perhaps he would even reward him for it. Entering the cave, Bruce noted that it smelled of orcs, suggesting that Rahidler had not deceived them. The guy noted that this place was strange. They had been walking for so long, but they still hadn't met a single monster. They stopped. The road diverged into 3 identical passages. Realizing they would have to split up, Bruce drew a symbol on Gil's arm, a fire gate. If any of them finds a clue or gets into trouble, they must cast a spell, and the others will immediately teleport to them. Bruce suggested that he go left, Feloja go right, and Gil go straight. The guy reminded them once again that in case of danger, they should cast the spell he had just taught them. Gil knew he needed to level up somehow, but there wasn't a single monster nearby to do it. The guy suddenly stopped, noticing the monsters that had gathered around the girl's corpse. It was a level 47 Toganj ghoul, a soul rejected by heaven and hell. It can rip a person apart with one bite. It is afraid of sunlight. Ghouls live in packs and rarely appear alone. As soon as Gil thought about monsters, here they were. The orc informed Lord Fenner that 3 wretched worms had entered their territory, but now they had split up and trapped themselves. The monster was sure that the local evil spirits had already torn them into small pieces. Gil noted that these ghouls were not that strong, but there were too many of them, and they gave a lot of experience. The guy killed 10 ghouls, for which he received 20,000 experience points. However, Gil understood that killing monsters one by one was extremely ineffective. The guy saw that the experience bar was rapidly filling up. He hoped that he would be able to level up soon, because there was not much time and he needed to finish here quickly. The number of ghouls killed exceeded 99, and Gil reached level 14. Thanks to this, 3 skills became available to him: Divine Punishment, Divine Strike, and Divine Path. The system asked him to choose 2 of them. Gil noted that it would be quite difficult to choose just 2 of the 3 skills based on their descriptions. Divine Path and Divine Punishment are a good combination. And if you use Divine Strike and Divine Path at the same time, the guy will be able to quickly restore HP. You could use Divine Path to increase your speed and get close to the enemy. and then use divine punishment, or divine strike. After thinking for a while, Gil decided to choose the divine path and divine strike. The guy was wondering how Bruce and Feloya were doing, because they could also meet these monsters. However, the magic mark on his hand did not appear, which meant that everything was fine with him. Jill knew he had to move on and rushed forward, where more monsters awaited him. Bruce slammed the ground, unleashing hellfire. Total destruction. The monsters instantly burst into flames, screaming loudly in pain. Bruce froze, suddenly hearing someone singing. A stranger emerged from the depths of the cave, loudly humming a melody. Bruce assumed that it was she who set these ghouls on him and promised that he would turn the girl into ashes. The stranger only smiled slyly, and dozens of hands reached out from the ground towards Bruce. The guy realized that it was all because of that song, because of which he could no longer move. The girl came close to Bruce, laughing cheerfully, and the guy anxiously asked what she was going to do. Sticking out her long tongue, the girl noted that she hadn't come across such tasty specimens for a long time. The girl said that now she would slowly savor every piece of his body. Bruce realized that he would soon die. Suddenly the girl screamed. Blood spurted from the wounds on her hands. Holding his sword forward, preparing for another blow, Gil asked if he was too late. The stranger was surprised that Delic did not kill the guy. Gil threw his head forward, asking if the girl was talking about him. The guy admitted that he was stronger than the other ghouls, but he still dealt with the enemy in 2 counts. Enraged, the stranger opened her mouth and screamed loudly. Bruce was quick to warn Gil that the necromancer's song had a paralyzing effect. The girl was delighted, deciding that now she would definitely be able to eat them. However, Gil used his new talent, Divine Path, to rush forward and cut off his opponent's head in the blink of an eye. Gil joked that the girl had no hearing at all. Looking at this, Bruce noted that the guy was quite strong. Suddenly, the marks on their palms flared brightly, indicating that Feloya was in danger. A level 55 hellsnake appeared before the boy, an evil creature straight from the underworld. Its body was permeated with hellish fire and was capable of spewing flames. Feloya knew that this monster was much stronger than him. The guy could only defend himself. Killing him was out of the question. The snake struck again, shattering nearby rocks and throwing the boy back. Looking at the monster approaching him, Feloya decided that he was going to die now. Suddenly, Gil appeared in front of the guy, covering Feloya with his body. Gil slashed at the serpent, causing the monster's skin to crack. The serpent let out a long scream as it breathed its last. Gil apologized to Feloya for being a little late. Bruce reported that he and Gil had found nothing of value, and suggested that this was the road that led to the monster's lair. Helping the boy up, Bruce asked if he was okay. Feloya noted that he was fine and not so easy to kill. However, he noted that this creature was too strong and he had never seen anything like it before. Feloya assumed that this was the same monster from the legends. The guy thought that the king of monsters would simply kill them. After all, he is much stronger than all these monsters. Gil merely noted that it was not the monster of monsters that would kill Feloya, but his fear. The guy added that fear during a fight only brings you closer to death. It's just the king of monsters, and no one knows what kind of monsters they will face outside of Latona. Gil confidently declared that for the sake of his comrades, for the freedom of each of them, he would fight until his last breath. Suddenly the snake rose up, hanging over the boys. Having gathered all their remaining strength, the boys intended to kill this monster. Using his fire mage craft, Bruce informed Gil that he would attack first. The boys saw that the snake's elemental ability had almost recovered. Fallujah knew he didn't want to be a burden anymore and decided he simply had to give it his all. Having collected it, Fallujah used the hand of Dizang, the lord of the underworld, who saved the souls of the dead from the underground court. A huge hand appeared from under the ground and grabbed the snake, preventing it from moving. Taking advantage of the moment, Gil grabbed his sword and headed towards the monster. Gil thrust his sword into the snake at full speed and saw that only 20% of its scales were damaged. Without stopping, the guy continued to strike blow after blow until he managed to completely pierce the scales of the fire dragon. Thanks to the fact that the hellish serpent was defeated, the guy received 200,000 experience points and increased his level. For killing the secret boss, Gil received special equipment, the Hellfire Glove, which added 15 strength, 15 armor points, 10 mana units, and 35 points of fire damage. Gil was happy to receive new equipment, which also improves his stats. Bruce was surprised that they had been separated for only a couple of hours, and Gil's strength had already increased so quickly. He did not understand the reason. Hearing some noise from the passage ahead, all three immediately became alert. Bruce and Gil struck simultaneously, knocking back the spy who had been following them. Seeing that it was an orc they knew, Bruce asked why he had come, deciding that Rahidler had completely lost his fear. The orc honestly admitted that he was lost. It seemed that the Lord had prepared traps for them. After hearing about the traps, Gil finally understood why they encountered so many monsters here. Rahidler noted that they were lucky to have somehow managed to survive here. Hitting the orc with all his might, Bruce ordered him to tell him immediately where the king of the monsters was. The guy promised that he would kill the orc if he did not immediately take them to the right place. The orc promised to show everything, saying that the entrance was right here. Rahidler said some words in his language, and the door in front of them opened with a bang. After much thought, Grandfather Ubie finally opened the small cabinet where his armor hung. Boban, who was watching this, noted that the man hesitated for so long that he thought he would never open it. Ubie had previously forbidden him and Sally from entering this room. They had always wanted to know what the man was hiding there. It turned out he was hiding his armor there, although the boy noted that he hid not only his armor there, but also the hope that they would be able to get out of here. Grandfather Ubie was surprised to see the boy. He did not even notice how he came. Ban heard that the man was gathering a party to go beyond Latona. He was sure that Ubie would encounter the monster that killed his parents. Since Ban left, he had been training hard for one purpose. Boban confidently declared that he would go with Ubie. He hoped that this time the man would not dissuade him. Bruce warned Rahidler not to even think about pulling a trick. The guy promised to kill him if he dared to do anything. The orc assured him that he would not do that, and pointed out that the main hall was ahead, where the Lord should be now. Gil asked if the monster knew where the prisoners were being held. Rahidler immediately assured that he knew everything here. Gil immediately informed Bruce and Fallujah that as soon as they entered the main hall, the guys would have to get everyone out of here. Bruce decided that Gil thought they were going to get in his way. He told the guy not to get cocky. Just because he saved them once didn't mean anything. Gil wanted to object, but suddenly the system reported a danger. An unknown boss had been detected, the probability of defeating which was only 10%. Gil was surprised by such a low percentage of victory. He had been leveling up for so long. Even if he didn't have elemental abilities, he still couldn't be that weak. Seeing the boy's confusion, Fallujah asked if everything was okay with him. Gil simply noted that he simply did not want to involve them in this. So he told them to save the people when they got there, and he would fight the king of the beasts. Bruce immediately said that this would not do. He could not allow his comrade to fight alone and expose himself to mortal danger. Gil said that this monster is not as simple as they thought, and the probability of winning is only 10%. Bruce didn't care, though. If Gil hadn't saved them, they would have been dead long ago. Even if the odds of winning were slim, they weren't going to back down. Since childhood, Gil had solved all his problems on his own, both at school and in kendo classes. It didn't bother him much, but sometimes the boy felt a little lonely. However, Gil suddenly realized that he was no longer alone. Rahidler pointed ahead, saying that this was the entrance to the main hall. He also asked the guys to wait for them here, because the orc was afraid that the Lord would simply kill him. Seeing that the guys were not going to let him go, the orc declared that they might die, but he certainly would not. Once inside, the guys kept looking around, preparing for an attack. Gil didn't understand why it was so empty here. It made him very uneasy. The guy asked the orc if they were really going there. Rahidler replied that he didn't understand anything, because usually this place was carefully guarded. Suddenly, a strange sound was heard from the door, making everyone wary. Suddenly, Feloya was enveloped in some strange green smoke, freezing his body and lifting the guy into the air. The king of monsters, the leader of the orcs, Fenrir, level 85, appeared before the guys. Seeing Feloya writhing in pain, Gil immediately jumped up and charged at his opponent. Gil tried to strike the chieftain, but his sword only bounced off the shield guarding his opponent. However, distracted by the guy, Fenrir let go of Feloya. Bruce immediately rushed to his friend, barely managing to catch him. Gil didn't understand where the chieftain came from, or how he was able to so easily parry the guy's blow. Bruce assured that the guy shouldn't force himself if it's difficult for him. Feloya assured him that he was fine and advised the boy to hold on better. Feloya lifted the huge jowl on which Bruce stood and pointed it towards the enemy. However, the stone only flew into the shield without leaving any scratches on it. Gil also tried to hit again, but he also failed. The chieftain prepared to strike back. He raised his hands, green lightning sparkling around his palms. Bruce was thrown aside by a powerful shockwave. Gil managed to stay on his feet somehow. The guy tried to block the blow with his sword. Rahidler was incredibly happy with the events that were happening. He considered his master incredibly cool. Gil thought that this boss could only attack in one direction, but he just covered his entire body with his power and dealt a powerful area attack. The guy immediately asked if Bruce and Feloya were okay. The guys quickly assured him that he was okay. Gil had no idea how many abilities the boss had, or what they should do next. Suddenly the chief rose from his throne, laughing loudly and cheerfully. Fenrir noted that they were very funny and decided to play with his opponents a little more. A wind blew, raising dust. In a moment, the leader disappeared without a trace, leaving behind an empty space. Gil immediately became wary, trying to figure out where the enemy was going. Seeing lightning behind Bruce, Gil rushed to warn the guy. However, Bruce didn't even have time to move when the leader hit him in the chest with all his might. The boy tried to strike, but Fenrir easily caught his hand, dislocating his opponent's wrist. However, Bruce was not going to give in. He jumped up and tried to kick the chieftain. But this attempt was not crowned with success. One counterblow from the leader knocked Bruce to the ground. Bruce was surprised that Gil was able to repel the enemy's attack. The guy understood that he would not be able to defeat this monster even if he spent another 10 years training. Now Bruce understood how strong Gil was. Fenrir admitted that the boy surprised him. No one had ever managed to stay on their feet after his attack. The chieftain noted that the situation was becoming more and more interesting. However, Fenrir added that the boy was just an insignificant worm, and his pathetic attempts to resist only provoked the leader. Gil immediately rushed forward, promising that the monster would be even more surprised when he cut off its head. He promised to return to the chief the pain he had caused his friends in double the amount. Gil swung his sword at his opponent's face, claiming that it was for Feloya. Without stopping, the guy hit again, this time for Bruce. Gil used a divine strike, the shockwave of which was so powerful that it was able to knock the crown off the opponent's head. Then the guy used a lightning attack, ending up behind the leader. This was for all the other innocent people. Everyone stood there in surprise, watching Gil and marveling at how strong he was. Seeing that the Lord was about to use his elemental ability, Rahidler knew that they were all doomed. Gil frowned, watching the chief carefully, surprised that this was his true strength. The leader used his power, causing a whole pack of wolves to rush towards the guy. While Gil tried to fight off the enemies that appeared, Fenrir swung his staff, striking from above. The guy could barely stay on his feet. His sword flew to the side and his body was covered in many bleeding wounds. Gil felt like his body couldn't move. Plus, his abilities hadn't recovered yet. However, the guy was sure that everything simply could not end like this. The chief lifted Gil's body into the air, hitting him again with all his might. The boy fell to the ground, hitting his head hard. Fenrir informed Gil that he was just an insect that needed to be crushed and advised Gil to accept his fate. The guy didn't want to believe that this was the end. His whole life seemed to flash before his eyes. The name-calling at school, when he was called a nerd, how the girl he liked agreed to play with him, how the system reported an unauthorized exit. The boy remembered his mother when she picked him up from school and took him home. All this gave Gil the strength to reveal his inner abilities and change. An unknown voice told Gil to wake up, bringing him out of oblivion. The guy didn't understand what was happening because he had just fought the king of the monsters. Looking around, Gil decided that he was dead since he was in such a place. However, a stranger suddenly appeared and reported that Gil was alive. The guy didn't understand how the man knew his name and asked who he was. The man said he would like to know that too. When he woke up, he was already here. He didn't know how long he had been in this place. 1,000 years, 10,000. He couldn't remember. However, immediately after waking up, the man heard a mysterious voice. It said that one day a man would come and help him leave this place. The man realized that this person was him, Chen Jil. The guy still didn't understand anything and was more interested in how they could get out of here. Crouching down and bowing his head before Gil, the man asked to be accepted and become his master. He said that the voice told him that he could only get out of here by becoming part of the guy. That's why he asked Gil to become his master. The man was ready to do whatever the guy asked, just so he could get him out of here. Without thinking twice, Gil shook the stranger's hand, feeling energy fill him. The man realized that the guy had not deceived him, and he had actually been able to return. However, he had some strange feeling, as if some force wanted to break out. Gil was able to gain an elemental ability, the power of primordial chaos. Gil realized that the old man was his elemental ability. The chieftain did not understand how this was possible. He was surprised that this pathetic worm was not even harmed. Besides, it seems the guy has become even stronger than before. After awakening his elemental ability, Gil's strength increased, and he also gained access to a new skill, Total Destruction. It instantly consumed 90% of HP, consumed 100 HP every minute for the duration of the ability, and allowed the use of the power of primordial chaos to deal damage to enemies. Gil noted that his stats had not increased before. Now he realized that Grandfather Ubie's sword could only be used to its full potential by awakening its elemental abilities. The guy was incredibly happy that he finally had an elemental ability and a good sword. Now Gil was confident that he could counterattack. The chieftain did not understand what a worthless person dared to challenge him. He could not allow someone to compete with him just like that. Fenrir couldn't understand why he couldn't kill some pathetic worm. He promised that now the boy would see his true strength and tear the enemy into 1,000 pieces. In response to this, Gil used an elemental lightning strike. Having spent 90% of his HP, the guy used the skill of complete destruction. The king of the beasts was defeated. Gil leveled up and received 400,000 experience points. The quest to awaken the king of the beasts was completed. for which the guy also received 500,000 experience points and a black treasure chest. Ubie told the boy not to be lazy if he decided to help. Boban assured him that he was not lazy. He had simply gotten out of the habit of working with his hands. Sally asked if Jill would be back soon, as almost 3 days had passed. Grandpa Ubie decided to wait a few more hours and go after the boy. Suddenly, a green flash flew past them. Ban immediately asked Grandpa Ubie what was going on. Sally also ran up to the man, asking if he was okay and what it was. Ubie said that this happens when particularly strong monsters die. This energy came from the monster's lair. Grandfather realized that Gil had managed to awaken his elemental ability and killed the king of the monsters. The orc could not believe that the lord was dead, that some guy could kill him. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, the boy would never have believed that someone so strong existed. Bruce assumed that Gil had simply been hiding his true power all this time. The guy couldn't believe that he could kill such a strong monster, but at the moment, he was more interested in the guy who gave him the power. He said that Gil was his master now. It turned out that he was somewhere inside the guy. Faloja didn't understand why Gil froze. He should be happy. They defeated the chieftain. Gil was quick to reassure them that everything was fine. He noted that the boys were wounded, so he asked them to wait here while he freed the prisoners. Bruce replied that they would go with him anyway, and ordered Rahidler to lead them. The orc immediately agreed without arguing. Even though they had won, Gil somehow didn't feel happy. Something was still bothering him. Who was that old man? And how did he end up in such a strange place? Was it really just an accident that he got into the game? Gil began to suspect that there was someone behind all this. Suddenly, the boy felt his body start to tremble. He almost fell, but Grandpa Ubie appeared and caught him. The guy smiled cheerfully, saying that he had completed the task. Jill opened his eyes to the sound of someone calling his name. The woman noted that it was already noon, and the guy was still sleeping. Gil had tears in his eyes when he saw his mother. The boy couldn't believe that he had managed to return. The woman told the guy to get up quickly, saying that she had prepared his favorite food. Jill immediately rushed to hug his mother, unable to hold back tears of joy. Boban didn't understand what was happening and roughly pushed the guy away from him. He said that Gil had scared him and was surprised that he had even tried to hug him. Realizing what was happening, Gil immediately climbed back into bed, asking what Boban was doing there. The boy said he was just helping the old man keep an eye on him, so Gil shouldn't get his hopes up. He promised that when the time came, they would fight again. Ban told the boy to wait here while he told Sally and Ubie that he was awake. Gil realized it had all been a dream, but he didn't understand how he had gotten here. The last thing he remembered was Grandpa Ubie running up to him. The guy suddenly remembered Bruce and Philoia, asking where they were now. The system reported that the guy's inventory contained a treasure chest, as well as several points that were available for distribution. Gil remembered that he had received some key after defeating Boban and decided to try to open this chest with it. Gil received the legendary Ring of Fenrir, which gave +10 to all attributes and also allowed him to create the magical shield of the King of Monsters. The guy also received another legendary item, which turned out to be an egg. The guy was surprised by this and asked if it could be eaten. Suddenly, the egg began to crack. Seeing it hatch, Gil assumed it was a familiar. When Gil saw what hatched from it, he was shocked. The legendary treasure turned out to be a child. The baby immediately rushed at the guy, hugging him and calling him Daddy. Jill immediately asked the system what kind of child this was and what it was needed for. The boy didn't understand why he was in the treasure chest at all. The system reported that the guy did not have sufficient rights to access information about this creature, and also added that the guy was inextricably linked to this creature. Gil tried in every way to get the child off of him, but he continued to cling to the guy and call him Dad. Angrily, Gil repeated one last time that he was not his dad, asking if he could even talk. He was not going to drag the child along with him. The guy decided to ask Sally and Grandpa Ubie to whom he could give the baby. Seeing the expression on the child's face, Jill knew what was coming. The next second, the baby burst into tears. The system immediately informed him that for trying to refuse this creature, Gil would be punished. He would have to undergo an additional test, for which he had 30 minutes. Jill had no idea what this additional test was about. Suddenly, the child lit up, blinding the boy. Gil had already decided that this was some kind of punishment. Opening his eyes, the guy saw that he was in some snowy area. Gil immediately tried to calm the baby down, assuring him that he wasn't going to abandon him. He was just still in school himself, so he didn't even know how to take care of him. Suddenly, a huge monster appeared behind the guy, an ice devastator, an elite enemy of the 40th level. The system reported that the test had begun, and the guy had 30 minutes to defeat all the monsters. If he failed to complete the test in time, the number of monsters would double. He also had to protect this creature. If it died, the system would destroy the guy. The guy didn't get any points for killing monsters in this test. Gil told the little devil that he couldn't die, so he told him to grab his neck and not let go. Drawing his sword, Gil commanded his elemental power to manifest, preparing for battle. Ubie reported that Sally had not yet returned from the market and asked how Gil was. Boban assured him that the guy was fine. He was blooming and smelling good. Boban also asked the man how the search for people for his squad was going. Ubie reported that it was even worse than he thought. Almost no one had agreed to join them. People have believed Hicks. They are afraid that Ubie and the others will incur the wrath of God, and their peaceful life will end. Boban immediately stated that they could go themselves. He didn't understand why they needed anyone else. Ubie explained that the monsters outside the city were much stronger than the boy could imagine. Unless he was absolutely sure that everything would work out, he would not expose them to such danger. Ubie suggested visiting Gil so that he could tell them what he had encountered outside the city. Sally ran up and asked what they were talking about. Smiling at the girl, Ubie said that Boban said that Gil had already woken up. The girl immediately became eager to go to the guy. She couldn't wait to find out what elemental ability he had received. Gil tirelessly killed monsters one after another until the system reported that the task was completed and the timer was stopped. The child was very happy about this, calling the boy Dad again. Gil decided that if he really was his father, then his chances of survival were significantly reduced. Gil returned just in time. The next moment, the door opened and Sally stood frozen on the threshold. The girl was very surprised to see the child. She did not understand where the baby came from. Upon seeing the baby, Sally immediately began to cuddle him and call him Cutie. The girl asked where she came from, admitting that she simply adores little children. Gil was surprised that it was a girl and said that she had hatched from an egg. Sally thought it was some kind of joke because she didn't remember babies hatching from eggs. Gil himself knew that this was simply impossible. Besides, if he tried to throw it away, he would be punished. The men who arrived asked what was going on, because Sally could be heard a kilometer away. The girl immediately showed everyone the baby, saying that Jill had brought the child here. Boban was surprised that there was a child here. He didn't understand why he didn't see the baby when he went to see the guy earlier. Gil explained that she had simply crawled under the bed. The boy did not understand how he was supposed to explain everything to them. He knew that he had to come up with something convincing, and decided to say that he had saved her from the lair of monsters. Grandfather asked Boban and Sally not to make so much noise, because Gil had just woken up, and told them to better prepare something for dinner. Having put the baby on the ground, Sally ordered him to behave well, and promised that she would now cook him something tasty. Boban again asked the girl what she thought about becoming his girlfriend. to which Sally replied that she didn't think about it at all. The child came up to Gil, whining and pointing at his mouth. After stroking the baby's head, the guy promised that she would be fed soon. Grandpa Ubie apologized to the boy, but he did not understand what exactly the man was asking for forgiveness for. Ubie explained that it was all his fault. He had no idea that the king of the beasts would be so strong. He had almost killed the boy. Gil told the man not to blame himself for this, because it was his conscious decision in the first place. Besides, it helped Gil to realize firsthand everything his grandfather had told him. Now the boy knew for sure that he had not ended up here by accident. The guy said that during the battles with the king, when his life was already hanging by a thread, he suddenly found himself in some strange place. There was one man there who said that he was waiting for him, and if Gil became his master, then they would both be able to get out of there. Gil, of course, agreed, and when they got out, an elemental ability awakened in him, the power of primordial chaos. He had a feeling that all this was part of someone's plan. Gil wondered if Grandpa Ubie knew what was going on, if everyone who got an elemental ability went to that place. Grandfather answered honestly that usually nothing like this happens. And then there's his power of primordial chaos. Ubie had read about it in an ancient book, but he'd never seen it with his own eyes. The guy immediately asked what else was in that book. Maybe there was something there that would help him understand why he was here. Legend has it that tens of thousands of years ago, the evil god Morpheus descended upon the earth. Murder, chaos, suffering, and evil filled the world. In order to survive, people decided to declare a divine war. But Morpheus was too strong and people could not resist him. When the people were completely desperate, a hero appeared. His name was Hessiad. He possessed the power of the primordial chaos and could easily defeat even demons. Hessiad gathered a group of volunteers ready to fight back the evil deity. The war lasted for several decades, and finally Morpheus was defeated, and his soul was forever imprisoned in Tartarus. But Hessiad had to pay a terrible price for this. He, too, had to remain there forever. Gil wondered if the man he met could be Hessiad. Grandfather assumed that since the boy had mastered the power of primordial chaos, it was quite possible that this was true. When she came in, Sally asked what they were talking about so tensely and said that dinner was ready. Smiling broadly, Ubie assured that they would be there soon. The man asked Jill not to discuss this with anyone else until she finally figured out what was going on. Gil was surprised at how many different dishes there were and said that Sally was just wonderful. The girl said that she was just helping a little, but the head chef deserves praise. He is a real master here. Rahidler smiled sheepishly, thanking Ms. Sally for the praise. Gil was very surprised to see an orc here. He did not understand what Rahidler was doing here. The orc hesitantly said that he had been brought here by Master Ubie. Wanting to change the subject, the orc suggested that everyone quickly sit down at the table and help themselves to the dishes. Ubie noted that they knew almost nothing about what was happening in the Latona Desert. But Rahidler knew his way around there quite well, so he decided to take the orc with him. The child immediately climbed onto the orc's head, but he did not dare complain, assuring him that he was fine as is. Remembering his comrades, Gil wondered what had happened to him. After all, they had fought shoulder to shoulder in that cave. Sally said that Grandpa had sent them to the doctor and suggested that they go see him after dinner. The boys immediately pounced on the food, praising the orc's culinary skills. It turned out that cooking is Rahidler's hobby. Ubie asked to bring milk for the little girl, noting that it was too early for her to eat tacos. The man informed Mr. Hicks that the stranger was indeed with Ubie now. The magician said that was all for today. He told the others to return and report everything to the master. The dragon spread its wings wide, heading downwards into the underworld. The guy, who had been boredly sorting through the flowers, immediately turned his attention to the guest happy that Argolis had come. The man was a little surprised that Hades, his master, had called him so suddenly and asked what had happened. Hades reported that he no longer sensed Fenrir's energy from the Latona desert. Most likely, he is no longer alive. Argolis was surprised that Fenrir was dead. He thought that those pathetic bugs could not possibly kill him. Hades understood this, and that is why he asked the man to go to the desert of Latona and find out what happened there, because Fenrir was guarding one very important seal. Argolis said that he would immediately go there to carry out the order. Sally was shocked by how much had happened to Gil on the way to the monster's lair. She thought he would only have to kill a few monsters, and that would be it. Boban didn't see anything cool about it. He thought he could do the same if he went to the monster's lair. Gil pointed out that if the guy had gone there, he would have had to take his corpse away now. Boban immediately got angry about this and suggested that Gil fight right away. As if just now remembering this, Sally asked what kind of elemental ability Gil had. The guy immediately replied that he himself didn't know and asked what abilities priests usually receive. Sally reported that most often they receive the power of light, but she has met priests with other abilities, such as the power of fire and water. Gil replied that he had ordinary light power then. Ban immediately said that he had not expected anything better than ordinary light power, while Sally, on the contrary, believed that the guy's ability would be unusual. Gil remembered that Grandfather Ubie had advised not to tell anyone about the power of the primordial chaos yet. Sally reported that they had arrived and noted that this was the best hospital in all of Dirks. Gil had fallen behind a bit, looking around the building, and was now trying to catch up with his friends. The guy really hoped that Bruce and Philogia were okay. Jill froze for a moment, seeing some kind of sign on the floor that resembled a pentagram, trying to figure out what it was. Sally didn't understand where Gil was stuck, but when she turned around, she saw that the guy was nowhere to be found. Finding himself in some strange hall with thrones, Jill did not understand what was happening and how he got there. Hicks said that he had transported the boy here using teleportation magic and noted that he should not be afraid. The man introduced himself as Hicks, the keeper of Dirks. He congratulated the boy, as only the best are honored to be in this hall. Gil said that he was just going about his business and asked why the man moved him here. Hicks noted that he knew the boy had killed the king of the monsters, so he wanted to offer him to join them. Power, money, beautiful women. They could give the boy everything he wanted. Turning away, Gil quickly replied that he was not interested and had no intention of joining them. He just wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible. Hicks noted that he had told the old man right away that he and Ubie were of the same ilk, but he had insisted on meeting them anyway. The man had wasted his time. Hicks revealed that he had already sent men to kill the boy's buddies, which made Gil stop immediately. The man said that he was giving the boy one last chance. If he refused again, then he would kill him. Gil replied that he, too, was giving the magician one last chance. If he went out and didn't see Sally and the others, they would all die. Boban didn't understand where the guy had disappeared to. They had agreed to go to those two together. Smelling a strange smell, the boy immediately warned Sally, telling her to be careful. Boban immediately released his shadow assistants, pressing the girl to himself. The guy asked if she was okay. Sally assured him that she was fine, thanking Boban for his concern. The guy was incredibly angry that someone tried to attack Sally. He didn't care who it was. He promised that he would definitely kill him for that. Jill kept trying to dodge the attacks, not forgetting to protect the child who had been with him all this time. The guy understood that he wouldn't be able to attack the enemy with a child in his arms. Noticing the delight on the baby's face, Jill noted that he seemed to be enjoying what was happening. Hicks noted that the guy was not bad, much stronger than he thought. However, he advised Gil not to worry, because they were just getting started. The boy didn't understand what they had done to the man that he wanted to kill them. Was it because they were going to destroy the monsters outside the city? After hearing what Gil had said, Hicks decided that old Ubie had never told the boy the whole truth. The man said that they had a pact with these monsters. They send them people so that they can satisfy their hunger. They also promised not to hunt monsters outside the city. Hicks noted that Ubie had no objection to this. They sacrificed the weak for the sake of peace in the city. Gil was surprised that they never once thought about leaving Latona. They just found an excuse to send those people to their deaths. Hicks noted that the boy was not so stupid. The man thought it was a good plan, and again invited Gil to join them. The mage said that these monsters were sent to Latona by a powerful mage, and they would not defeat him. Ubie was just a weakling and a hypocrite. The man did not understand what he was thinking if he decided to challenge a god. Gil thought it was just an attempt to justify his cowardice. The boy was sure that Ubie's grandfather was against concluding a contract on such inhumane terms. He didn't care about their plans. The boy just wanted to go home. He didn't care if it was a man, a monster, or even a god. He was going to kill everyone who got in his way. Hicks just chuckled, noting that Gil was too arrogant a young man. Having put the baby on the ground, Gil asked him to sit there and not go anywhere, promising that he would return soon. Hicks noted that the boy need not worry. He had said that when he killed Gil and the little devil, he would bury them together. However, the man didn't even have time to move when Gil hit him in the chest with all his might. Gil kept throwing punch after punch, not allowing Hicks to even get up. The man was shocked and scared. He didn't understand who this guy even was. People, noticing the fight, immediately ran away, saving their lives. Sally flew up, directing a stream of fire at her enemies. Boban also did not lag behind, sending his dark counterparts to the slaughter. Taking advantage of the opportunity the guy gave her, Sally performed the fire dance. When the smoke cleared, the girl saw only a scorched, empty space where the enemy should have been. Sally thought it was impossible. She was sure she had hit the enemy right on target. The boys realized too late that it was actually just a double. The man was about to attack, but Gil, who suddenly appeared, did not allow him to do so. The boy said he didn't care who they were or what their goals were. They dared to attack his friends, so Gil advised them not to expect mercy. Not wanting to tempt fate, the enemy disappeared in the blink of an eye. Sally asked the guy what it was and where he had suddenly disappeared to. Gil only replied that it was a long story, promising that he would explain everything to them later. The most important thing now was to get home as soon as possible. Gil was worried that Ubie's grandfather might also be in danger. Ubie believed that if the boy had truly mastered the power of the primordial chaos, then according to the prophecy from the ancient book, when the gods and demons come to earth, endless darkness will descend upon the world. And only he who has mastered the power of primordial chaos will be able to save this world. Seeing the boys come, Grandpa Ubie was surprised that they returned so early. Had they already managed to visit those two? After telling about the attack, Sally asked if her grandfather knew those people. The man reported that the person Gil had met was Hicks, a wind mage, and that Sally and Boban had apparently encountered Lucius, a dark mage. Ubie said that they were both guardians of Dirks. Boban didn't understand why they attacked them then, since they were guardians. Ubie said that Hicks, Lucius, Sarkia, and Dorp, who was called the most powerful mage on the entire continent of Pozals, were heroes who came to Latona several hundred years ago. They were the ones who founded the city of Dirks. At that time, the desert was scarier than the underworld. People had to not only constantly hide from monsters, but also fight with each other for food and shelter. The people were so hungry that they devoured the corpses of their comrades and traded children like pieces of meat. And so, when the people were already drowning in despair, Dorp appeared. He gathered the people and brought them to an oasis in the middle of the desert, gave them seeds, taught them how to farm and established his laws. Their desire to go beyond Latona may be seen by the Guardians as a threat to the peaceful life of people. If they anger the monsters, they may bring disaster to these lands. Gil noted that Ubie's grandfather knew full well that the price of this peace was the lives of innocent people. He didn't understand why he hadn't told them that before. Boban was very surprised. He did not understand what Jill was talking about. The guy said that the Guardians had a pact with the monsters. To maintain this notorious peace, they sacrifice innocent people. And Ubie's grandfather knew about it. Gil again asked why Grandpa Ubie hadn't told them the whole truth. The boy asked if the man also thought that their well-being was worth the lives of all these innocent people. Sally immediately objected that Grandpa Ubie would never agree to such a thing. He was one of the 12 heroes. However, the man stopped the girl, admitting that it was true. He remained silent when the Guardians made their decision, and thus gave his consent. Ubie suggested Gil to imagine that he had a choice. He could save either his loved ones or strangers. He believed that absolutely everyone would choose the former, because only loved ones are truly dear. Grandpa asked if Jill agreed that no one would sacrifice for strangers. The Guardians used the man's weak point to pressure him. If he tried to stop them, they would kill Sally and Boban. Ubie really wanted to do the right thing, but he just couldn't let them die. Sally and Boban were the most precious things in the world to him. He had to support the Guardians so that they could live. If it were just Ubie, he would rather die than do this, because he is no longer afraid of death. Jill didn't understand why you would make such a choice at all if you were strong enough to keep your loved ones out of danger and still do what was right. The boy believed that Grandpa Ubie decided that he was not able to stand up to the 4 Guardians and protect Sally and Boban, so he went for it. Boban was incredibly angry that Gil dared to look down on Grandpa Ubie. Sally agreed that even a god could sometimes meet a stronger god. Sometimes, in difficult situations, people had to compromise their principles. Gil asked the man if he could make a choice between Sally and Boban. The guy quickly apologized if he had offended the man with his questions, explaining that he was just that kind of person. Ubie countered that he was the one who wanted to apologize. He had simply resigned himself to being stuck here forever, but when he saw the boy, hope suddenly awoke in him. He admitted that Sally and Boban were no longer children. He had to tell them the whole truth and let them manage their own lives. Ubie said that if they didn't want to take any risks, he had a plan to protect them from the Guardians. Boban decided that according to Ubie's plan, he should stay here. But the boy did not like this plan at all. He assured that he would go with them and protect Sally. Gil said that now it was time for Grandfather Ubie to take action against the Guardians. For the sake of all those unfortunate people, for their freedom, for the well-being of their loved ones, they must fight. Ubie knew that if they wanted to get out of the city, they would have to fight the Guardians. The wind mage Hicks, who Gil had defeated, was the weakest of the 4. Their main problem was the other 3. Defeating Lucius, Saria, and Dorp, the strongest of them, would not be easy. In addition, Hicks would probably come for revenge when he regained his strength. So they did not have much time. If they couldn't defeat even them, then there was no way they could find the temple. Ubie said he would prepare a special training session for the boys. Whether they would be able to get out of here alive now depended on the 3 of them. Gil wondered how long he had been there, deciding that his mother had missed him very much. However, the boy was firmly convinced that he would return home very soon. Gil managed to grab the child in time, warning him that there was a cliff. If he fell, they would both die. He asked the imp not to create more problems for him. Gil remembered that he had gotten a lot of experience from killing the Monster King. But in the end, his level had only risen to 10, and he still had 50 skill points to distribute. When using the power of primordial chaos and the skill Total Destruction, 90% of HP is instantly consumed. Of course, this way the guy will get the power against which any shield will be useless, but he will have too little health left. Luckily, Gil had Berserker's Sorrow. It could be used immediately after activating Total Annihilation to quickly restore health. But one bottle cost 8 levels. His heal ability is essentially useless, so he decided to focus on attacking for now. When Gil gets a more powerful recovery ability, then he will start increasing the amount of HP. During the battle, Gil decided to first activate the Total Destruction skill, and then, instead of defending himself, he would continuously strike. Suddenly, Gil received a message from Sweetheart. The guy remembered that it was Xiaomei's ID. Gil didn't understand how this was possible. Why so many letters from Xiaomei suddenly came? Maybe he could now contact the real world. Xiaomei wanted to know why he hadn't come to her as agreed. Then, why he hadn't come to school. She also said that Zhao Feng and Xu Yuzhe hadn't come to school either, and his mother was moving to another city with some bald guy. Gil realized that he had been hanging around online all this time. The guy didn't understand why his mother suddenly decided to move, and where some bald guy came from. Gil knew that something was definitely wrong. The guy assumed that his consciousness was locked in the game, and in the real world, he was in a coma. Then it turns out that his mother decided to sell the house to put him in a hospital in another city. But that couldn't be. The best hospital in the country was located in their city. Moving would be illogical, especially since Mom had enough money to live in another city without selling the house. Gil was completely confused. He didn't understand what was going on there after all. The baby tried to cheer up his dad by showing him a flower. Gil rudely pushed the child away, saying that he had no time for flowers now. Having fallen to the ground, the baby immediately began to cry wildly. The system reported that the boy had upset the creature again and was now to be punished. Gil, preparing for teleportation, did not understand why all this was happening to him. This time, the guy found himself in a hot place next to the mouth of a volcano. Crouching down in front of the little boy, Gil apologized to him for offending him by giving the child his flower. Bruce was surprised to learn that Ubie was there too, but he didn't understand why the man wanted them to remain silent. What the point was, the guy immediately recognized Ubie, one of the 12 heroes, the strongest warrior of thunder and lightning who defeated the terrible troll Quink during the war for Obline. Bruce decided that the man was also stuck here. Ubie said that he was no longer the hero he once was, that he was just an ordinary old man. He had been here so long that he could no longer remember how many years had passed since he had arrived here. What the boy had spoken of was a thing of the past. Bruce couldn't believe that such a hero was talking to him. The guy decided that Ubie had some business with him. The man agreed with this and said that he wanted to ask him for something. Bruce assumed it must be something serious if Ubie had come to him personally to ask for it. The man assured them that it was nothing special. He simply asked that if anyone asked him and Philoia how Gil had defeated the king of the beasts, they not say anything. It had to be kept a secret. Although the guy didn't quite understand why this needed to be kept a secret, he promised that he wouldn't tell anyone anything. After thanking the guy, Ubie apologized for disturbing him and wished Bruce a speedy recovery. Seeing that even one of the 12 heroes was trapped in Latona, the boy realized that it was foolish to hope that he would ever be able to get out of here. Before leaving, Ubie said that if Bruce wanted to get out of here, there was one way. He needed to find a temple deep in the Latona desert. The man also added that they had already started recruiting people for their squad, and if the guy was interested, he could also come. Seeing that Bruce was able to stand up, Philoia decided that the boy's wounds were almost healed. He asked why he was not sleeping so late. Bruce said that there are excellent healers here, thanks to whom his broken bones have already healed. The guy also admitted that he still feels uneasy about what happened in the last few days. Bruce asked if Ubie, one of the 12 heroes, had come to the boy and talked to him about Gil and some temple. Faloja was very surprised to learn that this was one of the 12 heroes. Bruce noted that he wouldn't have recognized him either if he hadn't belonged to the warrior class like him. Ubie was his idol and role model, so he collected pictures of him. Faloja did not understand how it happened that the legendary Ubie, who swam across the Black Sea alone and defeated the troll Quink, also ended up locked in this desert. The 12 heroes are not just a name. They are the 12 strongest people in the world. In their world, every 5 years, a competition is held to determine the strongest warrior. Each brotherhood sends 5 heroes to the competition. The 12 brotherhoods whose teams reach the finals choose their strongest warrior. And it doesn't matter who wins and who loses. They will still be considered the 12 heroes. That year, an unknown brotherhood of the Thunderbird amazed the whole world. And all this thanks to Ubie. However, soon after, due to the war for Oblain, the Thunderbird Brotherhood fell apart. 4 competitors from that brotherhood died in that war. Only Ubie survived. He crossed the Black Sea alone, killed a troll, and then disappeared without a trace. Bruce noted that this story was breathtaking. The guy also did not leave Gil without attention. He believed that his strength was simply incredible, and they would never be able to compare with him. Noticing something approaching Sally's parents, Ubie hurried to warn them. However, it was too late. The enemy killed Morris and Luna with one blow. Looking at the photo of Sally's parents, Ubie said that he had made his decision. He and Sally would soon leave Latona. He had spent so many years in regret and remorse, and had never come to terms with their deaths. But here in Latona, he felt much better, because he believed that his imprisonment here was a punishment. But with Sally it was different. She did not have to pay for his mistakes. Ubie assured that he had taken care of everything, and that the girl now had magical protection, the barrier of the Lord of Thunder. If Sally was in danger, the barrier would immediately activate, and then even the gods would not be able to harm her. Returning from the completed mission, Gil shared the feeling that the punishment was much harsher than last time. The system reported that the monster's strength gradually increased during the penalty test. Each time the boy was punished, the enemy's attack power increased by 10%. The kid said something in response to this, but Jill still didn't understand him at all. And the boy also couldn't understand why all this was happening to him. Gil thought that for completing the task, he would be given some more or less decent weapon or ability, like summoning monsters, but instead he received a child, who also needs to be looked after. The kid continued to say something in response, but the guide did not understand him at all. He had the impression that he was talking to himself. It was only after a few moments that Gil realized that the child was pointing at the screen, which meant that he could see it too. Gil wondered why she could see the system if neither Sally nor Grandpa Ubie could. He supposed that the child might be useful to him somehow. Gil asked if she knew anything useful since she could see the screen. Perhaps it was because of her that the boy was able to receive Xiaomei's message. Receiving the same set of sounds in response, Gil realized that it was useless. However, he was still almost certain that he was able to read Xiaomei's message thanks to this imp. Looking back, Jill saw that everyone else had already arrived. The guy was glad to see Bruce and Philoya in the ranks of the squad. The guy noted that since Gil didn't come to visit them, they had to go to him themselves. The guy explained that he had run into some problems the day before and had to rush home. It was too late, and he didn't want to disturb them at night. Bruce assured them that everything was fine. Sally and Boban took care of them. However, The guy did not understand what he was talking about, because they were strangers. Bruce only quietly asked not to make him look like an idiot. Gil was very glad that they were okay, but he didn't understand why the boys had come here. Bruce explained that they wanted to join Ubie's squad. They didn't want to spend their lives in this damned place. Upon seeing the child, Bruce immediately began to cuddle him, noting that Gil did not look like he was such a naughty boy. Gil immediately rushed to justify himself, assuring that this was not his child at all. Only now did the guy realize that the creature still had no name. Remembering what she had babbled before, the guy said that her name was Yaluca. Boban suggested that they stop wasting time. They didn't come here to chat, after all. Grandpa Ubie was going to train them. Bruce didn't understand what the problem was. They hadn't seen each other for so long. Boban responded that they shouldn't take training so lightly. Suddenly, Grandpa Ubie burst out laughing. Gil didn't understand why the man was laughing. Ubie explained that it had never been this busy before, and he was just really happy about it. Sally also saw her grandfather so happy for the first time. Ubie warned them to have fun while they could, because soon they would not be laughing at all. Bruce noted that this sounded scary. He wondered how Mr. Ubie was going to train them. The man noticed that the word terrifying was not enough to describe what awaited them. They would have to go through an extremely difficult test. He was not sure that any of the 12 heroes would even be able to do it. Ubie explained that in any one-on-one battle, strength, speed, and endurance are the most important. So if they want to defeat their opponent, they need to find their weak points. Even a delay of 1/100th of a second can cost someone their life. Suddenly, their double appeared next to each of them. Ubie continued by saying that in a team fight, the most important thing is coordination and understanding. The man added that he made this artifact specifically to train warriors before the competition for the title of the strongest. With its help, you can create doubles that have the same skills as them, but are 1.5 times stronger. Ubie noted that the doppelgangers could not harm them, but they could hurt them. Anyone who received fatal damage would be eliminated from the competition. They would no longer be able to attack, and the remaining would have to fight in a 4-on-5 battle. If they lose a comrade on the way to the temple, the survivors will find themselves in a much more difficult situation. With these words, the man announced that their training was beginning. Rakidler said that he would now prepare dinner for the 3 of them and asked if the man had any special preferences. Seeing the child rubbing against him, the orc told him to move away. After all, if he accidentally hurt him while he was cooking, then Jill would kill him. Ubie noted that this food would not be enough and ordered Rahidler to prepare enough for 20 people. The orc was surprised and asked if there were any guests planned today. Ubie only replied that it was not for guests. As the boys entered, Ubie noted that he thought they would be able to get it done faster. Ubie reminded Rahidler that they needed 20 servings. The orc was surprised that the training was over so quickly, after only half an hour. Having licked the bowl clean, Jill immediately asked the orc for more. Ubie praised the boys for defeating their doubles in just half an hour. The man asked how the boys were enjoying his training. Seeing their angry faces, the man decided that they did not like her at all. Sally was angry. Because they didn't even have time to do anything, the doppelgangers finished them off in less than half an hour. Usually they either fought monsters or fought the enemy one-on-one, but this was different. Gil noted that it was more like a game where players fight other real players. This time, their opponents weren't mindlessly attacking monsters. When the battle first began, the doubles immediately scattered in different directions. The guys thought that they wanted to separate them and defeat them separately, so they decided to act together. But it turned out to be a trap. Doubles of Boban, Bruce, and the others did not allow Gil to move. He could only watch as his double dealt with the guys. In the end, he was left alone against 5 enemies. The battle had not even begun, and they had already managed to lose. Ubie praised Gil for his ability to correctly analyze the situation. As the boy had said, the outcome of the battle was already known before they began fighting. In the so-called team battle, it is not the strength of an individual that matters most, but the strength of the entire team. It was like a game of chess. Some pieces attack, others defend, and some have to sacrifice themselves to allow the others to strike. The doubles are not capable of thinking. They simply analyze the children's abilities and, based on this, choose the most optimal strategy. The strategy they chose allows them to deal with a team of newcomers in the most rapid and effective manner. Gil agreed that it was like a set of math problems a teacher would give you. If you understood the principle, finding the solution would be a breeze. But if you rushed to answer, you risked getting it wrong. Therefore, to learn how to fight in a team, you need to understand the general principle, just like when solving problems. In addition, you need to know the most effective ways to defeat the enemy and take into account your weaknesses. Ubie said that they had enough training for today and added that they would try again tomorrow, but this time he would be with them. Gil knew it was just training, but it pissed him off when he saw his comrades being killed and he couldn't do anything about it. If today's battle had been real, people dear to him, like Yaluca or his mother, might have suffered. The boy was angry that he was still weak and could not protect those who were dear to him. He remembered when he was little, his mother had the opportunity to get a job in a good company, but she refused because she would not be able to devote enough time to her son and found a worse job, but with a more flexible schedule. The woman thanked the man and asked if she could bring her son there on Wednesday afternoons, promising that he would simply wait until she finished work. The man was afraid that the guy would take the place intended for a client, and on Wednesdays they were the busiest. The woman promised that he would not take up the place because she would bring a stool from home. Noting that she was a single mother, the man decided that such a beautiful girl should not work so much. He asked if the woman was free that evening because he wanted to invite her to dinner. The mother only apologized and said that she was simply looking for a job. Without thinking twice, little Jill hit the annoying man with all his might, wanting to protect his mother. The woman immediately began to apologize for her son, assuring him that he did not do it on purpose. She also asked Gil to apologize to the man. The man immediately promised to kill the boy by throwing himself at the child. However, the woman did not allow him to even touch her son. When she finished, the woman calmly said that the job was not suitable for her. She apologized to her son for screwing up and not being able to take her boyfriend out for hamburgers today. Then Gil swore that he would always protect his mother. Suddenly the voice laughed at the boy wanting to protect others with such force. Gil immediately became wary. Suddenly the guy realized that it was the voice of that same old man. Gil immediately asked where the man was, but he stopped answering. However, Gil was sure that it was his voice he heard. The guy asked Yaluca if she heard anything, but she just shook her head. Gil thought it strange that the child had not heard anything. He was beginning to think that he was hallucinating because he was so tired. Frightened, Yaluca climbed onto the boy's stomach, pressing herself against him and seeking protection. Jill didn't understand how he was going to sleep now, looking at how this little devil had settled down comfortably. However, he could not scold for long, noticing that the child had fallen asleep sweetly. Jill still did not understand what to do with him. Looking at the child, Jill couldn't understand how his mother managed to raise him alone. Now, the boy knew exactly what he needed to do. First, he had to become stronger. Then, he had to defeat the guardians. And finally, he would be able to leave the city with Grandpa Ubie and the boys. The old man mockingly noted that the guy managed to kill an incredibly strong monster king. But today, he screwed up so badly, comparing it to some kind of Sisyphean labor. The man agreed that these doubles were stronger than the usual mindlessly attacking monsters, but to him they were also just small flies. Jill realized that he had not misheard the last time, and that it really was the old man. Looking around, Gil realized he was no longer in his room. He wondered where they were and how he had gotten there. The man said that this was the boy's spiritual world. He had come here immediately after Gil became his master. However, after the move, he became significantly weaker, so he was only able to contact the guy now. The man didn't know either. He said that in the spiritual world of each person, there is something that is most important to him. These flowers must have been deep in the guy's subconscious. Jill didn't understand why he didn't feel anything then. If those flowers were the most important thing to him, the man told him not to think about these boring things because he had not called the boy here to answer his questions. He called Gil here to make him stronger. His powers had recovered to less than 1%, but that would be enough for Gil to understand how terrifying the power of the primordial chaos was. Right now, the power Gil could use was barely 1/100th of his actual strength. Gil was incredibly surprised to hear this. It turned out that the man was 1,000 times stronger than him. The man noted that it didn't matter. The main thing for him was to make the guy stronger so that he would survive. After all, if Jill died, the man would go into oblivion and cease to exist. Gil was given the Primordial Chaos Challenge, the condition of which was to last 3 minutes without losing. For this, he could receive 400,000 points. The man suggested they begin. The guy confidently declared that 3 minutes was too little and he could last 300. The man asked Hicks if this Gil was really that strong, because he didn't remember a man ever being so badly wounded. Hicks said the guy wasn't strong at all. He was just inattentive and didn't have time to dodge. And there's nothing special about Gil. The woman noted that she didn't think so. If this Gil had shown all he was capable of, then perhaps they would have had to take away Hicks's body now. The man didn't understand what Lucius was even talking about. The woman recalled that Dorp had only asked them to find out how strong the enemy was. No one knew that Hicks would be beaten like that. She did not understand how such a worthless man managed to become one of the 4 guardians. Hicks told the woman to tone down her arrogance, saying that even she couldn't beat the boy. Lucius only stated that she was ready to help Dorp get rid of the weak link in their team. The woman agreed that this Gil was very strong, but it seemed to her that the guy relied only on brute force and did not think about strategy at all. If Mr. Dorp were here, it would be much easier to deal with Ubie and his gang. The man said that Ubie had already started to gather his squad. Besides, he is one of the 12 heroes, so his authority among the locals is quite high. If Mr. Dorp attacks him, the city will start to panic. The woman asked what he then suggested doing in such a situation. The man immediately summoned a desert wanderer, ordering the monster to go and kill the entire squad. Gil knew he had to avoid the man's attacks for 3 minutes to get 400,000 experience. After that, he would be able to handle any training. However, the boy did not understand why the man was not chasing him. This gave Gil a bad feeling. Suddenly, Jill barely managed to jump back, seeing a huge hole that opened up out of nowhere. The guy didn't understand how this could be called just training. It looked more like the man was going to kill him. The Monster King's magical shield gave the guy half a second to react. Otherwise, he would have been nothing but a wet spot. The man was surprised that the boy was able to block his blow unexpectedly quickly. It seemed that he had underestimated Gil after all. However, he still considered the boy's cowardly behavior to be simply unforgivable. Gil pointed out that the man had something behind his back, and as soon as he was distracted, the guy immediately started running away. Looking at the timer, Gil saw that he only had a little while left to hold out. The guy admitted that he was a little tired and suggested taking a break so that he could rest a little. The man did not understand why Jill was constantly running away. because the enemies would not let him rest. The old man jumped up and found himself behind Gil, wanting to teach him his first lesson. Suddenly, the guy also appeared behind the enemy, using a lightning strike. Luckily for Gil, it was a normal physical attack, so he was able to easily dodge it with his lightning strike ability. The man didn't understand how the guy suddenly appeared behind him. He didn't even see how Gil moved, as if he just suddenly appeared behind him. Gil's ability will only recover after 5 minutes. If the man attacks again, the guy will lose, and he only has 30 seconds left. Gil asked for a little rest, promising that after that he would not run away anymore. The man agreed, but on the condition that the guy would tell what technique he had just used. The system reported that time was up. The task was completed, and Gil received 400 experience points and a level increase. The guy explained that these skills were given to him by the system after he leveled up. When he activated the ability, it was as if some mechanism was activated. His body itself began to attack or defend itself. After stating that he had used a lightning strike to dodge the man's attack, Gil asked if he had any other questions. The man honestly admitted that he didn't understand anything of what the guy had just said, but he had the feeling that he had seen this lightning strike somewhere before. The man still couldn't remember with whom he had experienced such a feeling in battle, even though it seemed vaguely familiar to him. Gil remembered Ubie's grandfather telling him the legend of Hessiad. The man had given him the power of the primordial chaos, so he must have been Hessiad. Gil decided that if the man knew his name, he would remember everything else. He told the man that he thought he knew who he was. The guy said that he was the legendary hero Hessiad, who once defeated the evil god Morpheus and saved the world. Gil asked if the man remembered anything after this information. Okay, Grandpa Ubie brought this orc here, but Bo-Ban didn't understand why he had to sleep in the same bed with him. The guy stood up and declared that he couldn't stand it any longer. Smelling a strange smell, Bo-Ban immediately realized that it was him and immediately ran away. Hearing some strange noise, Rahidler assumed that an earthquake had begun. Having somehow crawled out from under the rubble, the orc declared that if this continued, he would not have any whole bones left. Rahidler didn't understand why the house was falling apart and where Bo-Ban had disappeared to. The orc assumed that the guy had been buried. After asking Bo-Ban if he was okay and not hearing an answer, Rahidler became afraid that the boy had been crushed to death. Suddenly, a huge boulder flew into the orc's face. He immediately became indignant, not understanding who was throwing stones in the middle of the night. Looking around, the orc saw a huge wolf rushing straight at him, but Bo-Ban stopped it by striking him from behind. The boy realized that there was no mistake. This was the same monster that killed his parents. Even after death, Bo-Ban would not be able to forget him. All these years the guy trained hard. He was driven by only one goal, to find and kill this monster. Who would have thought that it would come right into his hands? Rahidler asked if everything was okay with Bo-Ban and what the monster was doing here. But the guy just told the orc to get out of here right now. Bo-Ban promised that he would tear the wolf's skin into small pieces, pull out all the bones from his body, and place a bowl of his blood in front of his parents' graves. Lucius noted with satisfaction that this plan was not bad. Hicks reminded him that the monster was supposed to attack only Ubie's squad, and everyone else would be unharmed, but he already guessed that this was not true. The man noted that Hicks had become smarter. He said that he had already summoned the other monsters and that they would soon lure Ubie out. Mr. Dorp wanted to kill him with his own hands. Lucius ordered the mage to go and deal with those guys who had recently joined Ubie's squad, and so that he wouldn't let them down this time. And the woman kept the young priest for herself. She hoped that the boy would be able to hold out longer, otherwise the battle would not bring her any pleasure. Rahidler ran as fast as he could, wanting to warn Ubie as quickly as possible and report the monster. Pointing to his house, The orc said that Ban was currently fighting a monster there. Ubie told Rahidler to go to Gil right away and tell him to take care of Sally. The guy said that only the legendary hero Hessiad could use the power of primordial chaos. He defeated the evil god Morpheus and imprisoned him in Tartarus, the dungeon of the kingdom of the dead. However, Hessiad himself was stuck there forever. Gil was sure that the man was the legendary Hessiad. Then it turned out that the place from which the guy pulled him out was Tartarus. The guy asked the man if he remembered anything, but he honestly admitted that his head was still empty. Gil thought it was just unscientific. In all anime, movies, and comics, as soon as the hero learned his name, his memory would immediately return. The man said that he had no idea about this world, and the name was just a way of addressing him. Even if he was this Hessiad, he still couldn't remember anything from his past. However, Gil's reception made him experience some familiar feeling, as if he had found a thread that connected him to this world. Gil wondered what about him then, why he came here and was able to save Hessiad, and why he received the power of the primordial chaos. The mysteries became more and more. If the man really was Hessiad, then, after he regained his memory, he would surely be able to help the guy find answers to all his questions. The man offered Gil to fight again, and asked him to use all the techniques he had this time in case he could remember anything. Suddenly, Gil stopped, hearing the imp persistently calling him. The woman was very surprised to see that this boy had a child. Lucius promised the child that she was only going to kill the boy, and she would not touch him. Seeing how the little girl continued to cling to the guy, Lucius decided that she really wanted to keep him company, and said that she could kill her too. Gil woke up suddenly and scooped the baby up, flying away from the woman. He apologized for being a little late, and assured her that the baby had nothing to worry about, as he had fought worse enemies. The monsters attacked every house indiscriminately, killing everyone they could reach. Ubie immediately used a triple lightning strike, preventing the monster from biting its new victim. Grabbing the child in his arms, the man asked if everything was okay with her. Bruce didn't understand what was happening and why monsters suddenly attacked the city. Ubie reported that a magical barrier had been erected around Dirks, preventing monsters from entering, and that the walls of the city were constantly guarded. These monsters certainly couldn't have just appeared in the center of the city. The man guessed that the guardians were tired of waiting. He could bet that the monster invasion was just a distraction. The real goal of these monsters is to kill Ubie and his squad. Grandpa told Bruce and Philoia to help everyone they could and bring them to his home. The guys asked where Ubie himself was heading, to which he replied that he was going to restore the barrier. Bruce noted that there were monsters everywhere and said that they would go with the man. Ubie merely told them to take care of the civilians and walked away. The woman noted that it seemed like Gil had become even faster. Seeing another enemy with shadow powers, the boy assumed that she was the cloaked man who had attacked Sally and Ban a while ago. He had no idea that the dark mage Lucius that Ubie had told him about was actually a woman. Gil asked this lady why she liked to attack suddenly. The woman was incredibly surprised that the guy allowed himself to call her auntie. Gil didn't understand why they wanted to get rid of them so much, because if they defeated the god, all the inhabitants of the city would gain freedom. Lucius reported that Mr. Dorp had put so much effort into this city, had worked so hard to build it. She could not allow anyone to threaten its safety, and reported that there was no temple. The woman considered it nonsense that the boys believed that they could actually defeat God. Gil countered that the temple did exist. He also didn't care if it was a man, a monster, a demon, or a god. He would kill anyone who tried to stop him from finding the temple or tried to harm his friends. Lucius was surprised that the guy had the nerve to throw around such big words. Since the guy had defeated Hicks, he already imagined himself to be incredibly strong. However, That mage was the weakest of the four. Summoning her weapon, the woman said that she was as strong as Dorp himself. Lucius immediately summoned the level 45 Wolves of Darkness. Summoned from the Shadow Assassin's magical space, they possessed incredible speed and excellent maneuverability. The woman ordered her shadows to kill the guy right now. Using the Divine Strike, Gil was able to deal with his opponents without any difficulty. Lucius couldn't believe her eyes at first, thinking it was simply impossible. The woman summoned a stream of darkness. 3,000 blades. Gil quickly took up the shield of the King of Monsters, mockingly asking if that was all the woman could do. Seeing that the guy simply dispelled them, Lucius admitted that she had underestimated his strength. She noted that it was quite good. But for a woman, it was just a warm-up. Now Lucius was determined to show the boy her true strength. Gil's Defend Dirks quest has been updated. If the city's integrity drops to 0, the quest will fail. The final reward could change depending on the number of monsters attacking the city and the city's integrity. The shield cracked, which the monsters took advantage of, continuing to enter the city. The man asked Graya how much more time she needed to fix the barrier. The girl reported that the monsters continued to arrive, which is why they were unable to close the gap in time. Their strength was already running out. The teacher told no one to stop. They had to protect this city, so he ordered them to fight until their last breath. The man told Wagner and Roman to hold off these monsters so they could seal the breach and save this city. The shield continued to crack. Suddenly, a huge bolt of lightning struck the newly formed hole. The magicians did not understand what had just happened. They were surprised that the breach had suddenly disappeared. Noticing the man flying up, the magicians immediately recognized him as the legendary Ubie, one of the 12 heroes. Ubie said he would handle this himself and ordered Commander Damon to help the others plug the other breaches. Suddenly, a strong wind arose, which made the man barely able to stay on his feet. Seeing the silhouette in the sky, the soldiers rejoiced, recognizing Mr. Dorp in it. However, the very next moment, the ground beneath him caught fire, instantly incinerating everyone who was there. Ubie, angry at this act, asked the man what he was trying to achieve with his actions. Dorp only replied that he had given these worthless people the right to live on this land. And, of course, he could take that right away at any moment. The man noted that this is what happens to those who try to betray him. Gil darted from one side to the other, trying to dodge the enemy's merciless attacks. Watching what was happening, Lucius could not understand where the priest got such strength from. Gil advised the woman to admit defeat and go defend the city rather than stand here and interfere with him. Lucius laughed when she heard about the city's defense. She said that Mr. Dorp had already destroyed the protective barrier. Today, all the traitors would get what they deserved. The woman added that Mr. Dorp would kill that Ubie, one of the 12 heroes, with his own hands. Gil was surprised to hear that Grandfather Ubie was currently fighting Dorp. The boy was scared because he still had the man's sword, and it would not be easy for him to fight the strongest enemy without a weapon. The guy understood that he needed to deal with Lucius as soon as possible and rushed to help Grandpa Ubie. Gathering all his strength, Gil immediately used the skill Total Destruction. Lucius was surprised to see that the boy had become stronger. Using the divine path, Gil was at the woman's side in an instant. The guy used the lightning strike skill, knocking all the air out of Lucius. Exhausted, the woman did not understand why Gil did not kill her. Gil's quest progress has been updated. He has defeated Lucius, the dark mage. The points and items received will be calculated after the quest is completed. Ubie tried his best to block his opponent's blows. Dorp was surprised that Ubie considered himself the same as before. He noted that the famous hero was a thing of the past, and now Ubie was just a pitiful old man. He is also a god, looking down from above as they, miserable insects, slowly fade away. Using the windsong skill, Dorp pushed Ubie back, bidding farewell to the old man. Lucius felt pain all over her body, unable to move. The woman knew that Jill could have easily killed her then, and did not understand why the guy spared her. She believed that Jill wanted to humiliate her, that killing her was beneath his dignity. Lucius noted that he could not even hope that she would shower him with gratitude. The woman promised that next time she would definitely kill the guy. Gil calmly replied that he didn't need her gratitude at all. He just had more important things to do right now. The guy also promised that next time he would hit her with something other than the hilt of his sword. Gil didn't understand why he couldn't kill the woman. She was just an NPC. It was probably because everything here was too realistic, as if he could kill a real person. But the guy's conscience wouldn't let him do it. That was the contradiction between the game and reality. In the game, you have no responsibility. But if a guy likes killing here, where's the guarantee that he won't continue doing it in the real world? Lucius informed Gil that Ubie was currently near the barrier in the western part of the city. However, the woman warned that even if she and Ubie united, they would still not be able to defeat Mr. Dorp. Gil assured her that she need not worry about that. The system told Gil to study the map, proceed to the barrier in the western part as quickly as possible, and return the Etzel sword to Ubie. Grabbing a contented Yaluca in his arms, Gil ran as fast as he could to help Grandpa Ubie. Dorp took blow after blow, surprised by Ubie's strength. Rising up, the man unleashed a powerful attack, using a devastating clap of thunder. Dorp laughed at the pathetic old man going to so much trouble for a bunch of worthless insects. He found it very touching. The magician admitted that he had fun with the man because he had not met such rivals for a long time. However, Dorp added that Ubie didn't stand a chance against him. As a reward for his efforts, Dorp decided to show the man the terrifying power of the four-element mage. After killing the last monster, Feloya reported that there were no more monsters left in the area. Bruce noted that it seemed that Mr. Ubie had already fixed the barrier and asked the guy how he was, if he was injured. Feloya assured him that he was fine, and admitted that he had never seen so many high-level monsters in one place before. Bruce agreed that these monsters were crawling out of every crack like cockroaches. He couldn't imagine how the people who originally settled these lands survived. After all, they had to go through something much more terrible than what was happening here now. Bruce reported that they had already destroyed all the monsters in the city center. Now he and Feloya had to help those fighting on the outskirts. The boys froze when they heard a strange sound. Feloya was surprised to see that someone had summoned the beasts of water and fire. They were incredibly huge in size. The guy did not believe that they had such a powerful mage in their city, capable of subjugating several elements. Although such mages possess multiple elemental abilities, their powers individually are weaker than those who only have access to one ability. Therefore, they usually focus on mixing elements, and their damage from normal attacks is quite small. Bruce understood that only one person could use multiple elements and still have such power. Feloya pointed forward, seeing that it was Master Ubie. The man used a triple lightning strike, hoping that it would kill his opponent. Dorp thought Ubie was incredibly naive to think he could defeat him with that. The mage easily struck back at the man. However, Ubie was not going to stop. He continued to stubbornly strike blow after blow, sparing no effort. The man flew to the side, landing on the ground. His strength was running out, and his body was lacerated with multiple wounds. Dorp was impressed and surprised that Ubie managed to dodge this attack. However, he considered his opponent to be just an ordinary old man. Now Ubie was just a shadow of the warrior who had single-handedly defeated the troll Quink. But Dorp had a young body and boundless magical powers, and all their puny lives were in his hands. Ubie knew that the mage had sold his soul to the devil in exchange for unlimited power. Dorp had no taste or smell. Ubie asked if he was happy with his life as a walking dead man. The man assumed that the magician was simply jealous of ordinary people. Dorp immediately told him to shut up, hitting his opponent with shadow lightning. He promised that he would crush Ubie like a cockroach. He would tell the townspeople that it was a man who damaged the barrier, and he killed him and saved everyone again. However, Dorp did not have time to deliver the final blow. Gil, who had suddenly appeared, threw the magician back. Helping Ubie up, the guy asked how he was feeling. The man assured him that he had gotten off with just a few scratches and asked what Gil was doing there. Lucius told him that Dorp was going to kill Ubie here, so he rushed to help. He apologized to the man for not returning the Utzel to him right away. Then Ubie would not have suffered. The man didn't want Gil to blame himself for this. He assured him that even if he had me, he still would hardly have been able to defeat Dorp. He gave up his soul in exchange for incredible strength. Besides, the mage had told the truth. Ubie was no longer the same as before. His body had aged, his strength was almost exhausted, his movements had become slower. Lives are a mountain. Ubie had once reached the top, and now he was gradually descending to the foot. The man said he had installed a portal near the beds. He told Gil to take Sally and the others and get out of here quickly while he held off Dorp. However, Gil was confident that he would not leave the man alone. He, Yaluca, Sally, Boban, Philoia, Bruce, and even Rahidler had become almost like family to him. He was not going to leave any of them behind. Mom always told the boy that even though their life was difficult, they should never give up their beliefs and blindly submit to fate. Gil promised Grandfather Ubie that they would definitely defeat Dorp and all go together in search of the temple and then get out of here. The boy's task was completed. The Etzel sword was removed from the inventory and the stats were reduced, but for this, Gil received 150,000 points. Dorp laughed when he heard that the boys wanted to get out of here. The mage aimed his magic at them, causing a massive explosion, but they were able to withstand it thanks to Gil's shield. Dorp found it funny that these pathetic nobodies were actually going to challenge him. Mog sent a blast of fire rain down on them, intending to kill both Ubie and the boy. Gil knew that the mage's attack was too powerful. The system reported that Fenner's shield would soon be destroyed. Dorp was sure that no one would survive the explosion of fire rain. The mage expected that Ubie would have already turned to ashes. However, when the smoke cleared, the man stood stunned, unable to believe his eyes. Jill and Ubie froze in surprise, looking at little Yaluca, who created a new shield around them. Dorp didn't understand how a child could create a magical shield of such a level. The system reported that Yaluca's will to fight had awakened. Her ability was magical hunting. When used, it created a super-strong magic shield that could absorb 50% of damage and convert it into energy for a magic attack. However, this ability consumed 100 HP per second. Jill immediately asked Yaluca excitedly if she was injured. Exhausted, the little girl flew down, but the guy managed to catch her in time. Gil was greatly surprised that Yaluca was able to block an attack that even the King of Beasts' shield could not withstand. If it weren't for her, he and Ubie would have been reduced to ashes by now. Yaluca's power limit was exhausted. She would be automatically placed in storage and fully restored in 24 hours. Jill thanked the child for saving them. Jill told her to rest while he dealt with Dorp. Ubie noted that Dorp had been using mages for too long, and his powers should be running low. Ubie said that he would distract the mage, and Gil should try to get close to him and attack. Gil was curious about Dorp's level. The guy understood that it definitely couldn't be lower than Fenner's. Looking into the system, Gil realized that he couldn't get any information about the magician yet. Dorp was incredibly angry. He didn't understand when this Ubie would finally die. Having flown up to the enemy, the man announced that the time had come for the decisive battle. Dorp thought it was simply ridiculous. He confidently declared that the man would not withstand even one blow from him. Ubie replied that they would see about that, and used a flashing lightning bolt. Dorp was sure that the man had overestimated his strength. Ubie continued to strike relentlessly, blow after blow, without stopping for a second. Dorp advised the man to save his strength, because at this rate, they wouldn't be able to get even one step closer to him. However, thanks to Ubie, Gil was still able to get close to Dorp. As a result of activating Total Destruction, Gil's HP was depleted by 90%, leaving him with only 10. The system asked the guy to monitor his health. However, as soon as Gil tried to strike, his body was immediately bound by magical bonds. Dorp thought it was funny that they tried to defeat him with such a childish trick. Gil immediately activated Divine Path by spending 70 mana. His speed was increased by 20%, and the inactive Whirlwind effect was removed. The system reported that an enemy had been detected within range and would be hit 20 times. A total annihilation buff has been applied to Divine Strike, causing the damage from Divine Strike to be converted to true damage. Gil and Ubie teamed up to launch a joint attack. The man noted that, although Dorp sold his soul to the devil and received incredible power, he should not forget that the weak point of any magician is his defense. Even though Ubie wasn't as strong as he used to be, that blow was enough to take the mage's life. The man confidently declared that it was all over and saw the red glow from its explosion. Gil was surprised to see the true strength of one of the 12 heroes. He admitted that Grandpa Ubie was indeed very strong. The blow he dealt was no weaker than Dorp's, and perhaps even stronger. Ubie reported that they still had many holes in the barrier to plug, and suggested that Gil split up. The man told the boy to go west, and he himself would go east, since it looked like the battle there was not over yet. Gil stopped suddenly. He had a feeling that something was very wrong here, but he couldn't figure out what it was. Suddenly the guy realized that everything went too smoothly. Moreover, after the battle ended, he did not receive a system notification. Suddenly, Dorp rose again. He didn't think that this boy would be able to get rid of the magical shackles that the magician had placed on him. The boy allowed Ubie to get close to him and attack, but the man could not even imagine what abilities Dorp possessed. Ubie admitted that he was wrong. Dorp did not get his power from the devil, but from Hades, the god of the underworld. The man remembered telling Gil about the man who killed Sally's parents. He used exactly the same abilities as Dorp. Ubie remembered hearing the man say Hades' name. He cursed under his breath that this was not it at all. He would just waste his time again. Bad luck was pursuing him. He did not understand how he could now report this to Hades. Ubie then promised that he would kill him, even though he did not understand who the man was or why he did it at all. Ubie was sure that Dorp was using the same abilities as the man. There was no mistake. The murder of Sally's parents and their inability to escape Latona had something to do with Hades. Dorp had no idea that Ubie might know the source of this power. The mage hadn't originally intended to use divine power to kill them, but who knew the boys would resist so strongly? Dorp reported that the elemental powers that were given to them by the gods could not cause him any harm. All their attempts to kill him were simply pointless. The magician thought it would be better to just die peacefully. He didn't understand why the boys continued to resist. Dorp decided that he would have to teach them a little lesson and immediately disappeared. At first, Gil thought Dorp was just moving really fast, but even the system reported that the target had disappeared. Dorp suddenly appeared behind Ubie, immediately striking the man. Gil immediately rushed to help Ubie, but the magician did not allow the guy to approach them. The next moment, Dorp appeared next to the guy. The magician did not understand how such a weakling as him dared to challenge him. The system reported that Gil had less than 10% HP left, and strongly advised the guys to urgently replenish their health. The guy realized that Dorp could become invisible, and that his attack was simply incredibly powerful. Dorp likely received only a small portion of the god's power, but Gil and grandfather Ubie could not harm him anyway. Such was the power of Hades, the god of the underworld. Gil became angry when he realized that in the eyes of the gods they were just pathetic insects. Dorp laughed at the boy's despair. He said that people are cruel by nature. Even small children can crush defenseless insects and laugh at how desperately they fight for their lives. And now they were in the place of those insects. Dorp found it funny to watch them resist. He just couldn't tear himself away from it. Lifting Gil off the ground, Dorp advised him not to act like a hero, because in truth, he was nothing but a nobody. However, if the guy can entertain him, then perhaps the magician will consider sparing Gil. However, they were interrupted by Ubie, who was determined to send Dorp straight to hell. The magician once again reminded the man that if he had suddenly forgotten, elemental abilities could not cause any harm to the owner of divine power, so he should not even try. No matter how powerful their elemental abilities, mere mortals could not kill a god. Alas, such was the cruel reality. Gil wondered if it was part of the game's setting that the gods couldn't be harmed by elemental power. Dorp recalled that he had given Gil a chance to save himself, and said that now it was time for him to make a choice. The magician assured that if the guy now killed this old man Ubie with his own hands, then he would spare Gil and all his friends. The guy immediately replied that he couldn't even dream of it. Then Dorp said that the guy could only watch this pathetic old man die in agony, and then he would take care of his friends. The mage suggested looking at how much Ubie was suffering. He thought it would be better to just end his suffering. Gil promised to kill Dorp if he touched Ubie's grandfather. The mage said that either everyone would die, or only Ubie. Gil knew there was nothing he could do. He couldn't believe that all he could do was watch Grandpa Ubie get tortured and everyone around him die. Sally, Boban, Bruce, Philoja, Yaluca. And he still had to go home to find out what happened there. When Gil thought he had no other choice, he suddenly heard Hessiad's voice. The man was surprised that this non-entity called himself a god. Hessiad reported that if his master died at the hands of this worthless man, he would never again be able to wash away such a disgrace. Gil reported that Dorp had divine powers, so elemental powers could not harm him. Hessiad agreed that the gods would not give people powers that could harm them. However, this only applied to normal elemental abilities. Gil realized that the man was up to something. Hessiad reminded them that if Gil died, so would he. So, of course, the man couldn't let them die at the hands of this guy. He was irritated by this drop. Although the power of the god of the underworld was indeed enormous, today, to his misfortune, he encountered Gil. Normal elemental abilities couldn't harm the gods, but in the boy's case, it was different. The power of primordial chaos that Hessiad gave him is the only power in the world that allows him to kill gods. The man said that it was time for Gil to find out what the power of the primordial chaos really was. Now, the guy had access to 3% of the power of the primordial chaos. Seeing that Gil had passed out, Dorp decided that he had already given up and intended to kill Ubie himself. However, in response to this, Gil stated that the mage was about to die. His abilities, Divine Strike and Divine Path, were restored. Gil was also cleared of all negative effects, and his speed was increased by 20%. Hitting an enemy now restored HP. Dorp laughed, admitting that the guy was pretty funny. The man promised that the guy was definitely a corpse now. However, seeing how Gil caught his blow, the magician decided that it was simply impossible. The guy used a divine strike, knocking off 3,000 health from the enemy. At once, Hessiad said that if we imagine that divine power is fire, then the power of primordial chaos is water. which is capable of extinguishing it. The ability level of Total Annihilation has increased to level 12. When using it, each hit on an enemy reduces the recovery time of Divine Path and Divine Strike. Seeing Gil in the distance, Ubie was stunned to realize that this was the true power of the primordial chaos. Gil wondered why Hessiad was only now allowing him to use more power. The man admitted that he would not have done this if Gil's opponent did not possess divine powers. The boy's elemental ability itself goes against the will of the gods. Gods with a particularly keen sense of smell should have already sensed the presence of this power in their world. The man believed that these gods had already gone in search of Gil to kill him. In the future, the guy will have to face not just pathetic minions, but real gods. The system provided a hint for the task. To finally unlock the power of the primordial chaos, the guy will need the medicine Tears of Deuce. Gil promised that even if his enemies are gods, he will still get out of here. When using Dose's tears, all abilities were instantly restored, as well as 1,000 HP and 700 MP. The speed of restoring all abilities increased by 100%. Dorp thought it was simply impossible. He didn't understand why he was shaking in pain now if Hades had taken his soul and all his feelings. The magician tried to understand what the guy had just done. He assumed that he was the one the legend was talking about. Suddenly, Gil appeared next to him, using both Divine Path and Divine Strike. Dorp quickly hid, using his invisibility skill. Gil activated the Eye of Dose, which made it impossible for the enemy to hide its location. The target was locked on. Dorp was seriously scared when he realized that the guy could see him. The system announced that Gil had dealt 30 hits. The enemy had taken damage from the explosion 3 times, and the Divine Path ability had been restored. The enemy's HP was less than 10%. The effect of Dose's tears should have worn off in 2 seconds, and there were 5 seconds left before the total destruction effect ended. Dorp chuckled as he realized how powerful the God Slayer truly was. Everyone stopped, staring at the sky, hearing a loud explosion that illuminated everything around. Dorp was defeated. Gil received the Red Key, Windstone, Ice Breastplate, and Earth Ring. For the completed task, the guy received 1,500,000 experience points and a divine element. He also received access to remelting materials, an illustrated reference book, and the tracking function on the map was unlocked. When Gil landed on the ground, Grandpa Ubie immediately ran up to the boy, helping him stay on his feet. Hades was a little surprised to see that Dorp's soul had disappeared, since he was Latona's guardian. The man realized that the killer of the gods had appeared in Latona and assumed that Argolis should already be there. Sailing across the endless sea, the man was angry that this boat was so slow. But unfortunately, this was his only way to cross the endless sea. Argolis asked Cecil how much longer they had to sail to Latona, to which he replied that it was already in front of them. Gil heard someone's voice calling him persistently and decided it was his mother. Looking around, the guy saw that he was in a subway car, surrounded by many strangers. Gil did not understand what was happening and how he ended up here. The man said with displeasure that the guy had scared him a lot and asked why he was yelling at the whole carriage. A voice on the loudspeaker announced that the next stop was Institute Avenue. Hearing this, Gil assumed that he had returned to the real world. The guy couldn't contain his joy, shouting excitedly that he was finally back. The man standing next to him decided that he was definitely crazy. Gil merely apologized for his behavior, saying that he had simply had a nightmare. Seeing that the system was warning of approaching danger, Gil was surprised. He did not understand why the system was still here if he had returned to reality. Suddenly the boy heard his mother's voice, who insistently ordered Gil to run away from here. A moment later, the guy simply disappeared, dissolving into thin air. The men approached and asked if they had seen the high school student there, to which they were told that he had just vanished into thin air. Breathing heavily, Gil sat up in bed. Looking around, the boy realized that he was back in Latona, and it was just a dream. However, it all seemed so realistic to him. However, if all this really happened, then why did he hear his mother's voice? Sally entered the room, happy that the guy was already awake. The girl was holding a tray with a small breakfast in her hands. Gil immediately asked how the girl and everyone else were feeling. Sally assured that everyone was fine. Ubie said today that he could no longer rest and went to restore the city. And it had only been 10 days. Gil was surprised to hear that he had been asleep for 10 days. The girl added that his wounds had long since healed, but he still had not woken up. Everyone began to worry terribly about the boy, and Rahidler spent a lot of time making restorative medicine for him. Sally said that she was going to help her grandfather now and invited the boy to come to them after he had eaten. The girl also added that tonight the residents of Dirks would hold a big feast to thank Gil for saving them, and warned the guy not to forget to prepare a speech. Jill wanted to say something in response, but Sally simply said that there were new clothes behind the door and left the room. The boy suddenly remembered that Yaluca was still in the vault. He thought that since so much time had passed, she should have recovered her strength by now. However, the system reported that the operation was rejected because Yaluca had not yet recovered. Gil was a little surprised by this because 10 whole days had passed. The guy also received a new message where he was informed that he had completed the first part of the game's prologue on the Hellish difficulty level. All system functions will now be unlocked, including forging weapons and creating medicines. Gil decided that it was because of the Hellish difficulty level that he couldn't exit the game. But the guy didn't understand why he was only now gaining access to all the system's functions. Gil decided not to think much about it for now and wanted to see what was in the forging weapons and armor section. After looking at everything in detail, Gil noted that he had already seen a similar forging system in other games and decided that creating medicines would be about the same. After a couple of minutes of looking, the guy concluded that everything here was really like in regular games. And in the illustrated reference book, it was possible to see information about all the creatures encountered. Gil noticed that Yaluca and the wandering arbiter had question marks instead of levels. Apparently, to get information about them, the guy would first need to increase the level of the reference book. The tracking system will allow Gil to find high-level monsters nearby, making the leveling process more convenient. Titles can be obtained after certain events and provide various bonuses. The teleportation system used the power of the elements to create teleportation points. It seemed that Gil could only create 3 points so far. The guy decided that now he should work on increasing the level of the primordial chaos. The system reported that the guy had 1 divine element. When used, the power of the primordial chaos would increase by 1%. Gil realized that in order to strengthen his elemental ability, he needed to gather divine elements. So far, he only had access to 3% of the power. Then he would need to go to the temple and kill the mythical beast Nabulusi. So he decided that it would be better for him to increase his strength as quickly as possible. The boy's ability level had only increased by 1%, but he could already feel a huge amount of power filling his body. Gil also received the Earth Ring, a high-level ring imbued with the power of the earth, giving him 25 points of armor and 30 points of intelligence. When used, damage from earth attacks was reduced by 30%. The guy also received an Ice Cuirass, which added stamina, intelligence, and 5,000 HP. If Jill is attacked, an ice shield is activated, reflecting enemy attacks and reducing their speed by 50%. Only the key remained. The boy remembered that the last time he opened the chest with such a key, Yaluca appeared. He wondered what would happen this time. Bruce reported to Master Ubie that all the wounded had been taken care of, and all the breaches in the magical barrier had been sealed. There was still some work to be done, and tomorrow life in the city would return to normal. Ubie asked how the preparations for today's feast were going. The guys said that Rahidler and Feloja had been preparing since early morning and would most likely be finished very soon. Bruce also added that Hicks and Lucius are now under the care of Boban, but the last guardian, Sarkia, seems to have fled the city. They have lost track of him. Hearing that the keeper had fled the city, Ubie suspected that something was fishy. Bruce was sure that he would not survive long outside the city alone. The man admitted that the boy was right, but he always felt that Sarkia was actually hiding his true strength. Perhaps he was even stronger than Dorp. Gil assumed that this key was needed for some task. The system said that when the blood moon descended on this world, a brave hero would destroy a great evil and gain unlimited power. After using it, a side quest will open and the guy will go to a special labyrinth. The task will be considered completed if he destroys the final boss within the allotted time. After completing the task, he will randomly receive a legendary weapon or armor. If Gil dies during the task, his body will be destroyed by the system. The guy remembered that he was told the same thing when he was doing the penalty task of Yaluca. When Gil first got to Latona and was killed by that wandering arbiter, he saw the inscription, "Player died." But there was no mention of any connection with the player and the real world. Gil decided that this meant that only his consciousness was locked in the game. However, he did not understand how his body ended up in the subway. The guy was angry because he couldn't figure out what was going on here. Was it really just a dream? Hessiad suddenly appeared and asked if everything was okay with the guy. Gil was surprised that the man appeared there, to which he replied that it was just an illusion. Hessiad wanted to tell the boy that it was not a dream. He had actually disappeared from Latona for a while, but then for some reason he had returned. Gil couldn't believe his ears. So he really had left Latona. Hessiad reported that he had seen everything the boy had seen. That bald guy was obviously looking for Gil, and he somehow knew that he would end up in the subway. But the guy didn't understand why he heard his mother's voice and why she told him to run. Hessiad didn't remember her saying that. He had never heard of such a method of travel before. Gil was not teleporting with elemental or divine power, but with some incredibly powerful energy. Realizing that he had truly left Latona, Gil had two options. The first was that his consciousness had remained in the game the entire time, and he had simply teleported to a location very similar to the subway in the real world. Second, he really did return to reality. But the unconscious body couldn't have been riding the subway all the time, so not only his consciousness, but also his real body must be in the game. In any case, it proved that this world was not real. Gil assumed that the bald man was the one Jaume wrote about. Then it turned out that they took Mom. Gil didn't understand why all this happened to him and why he ended up here at all. The boy could no longer contain his emotions, but Hessiad told him to calm down. He had to stay calm. The system asked the guy if he wanted to use the Crimson Keys and said that if Gil didn't make a decision within 10 seconds, the window would automatically close. Gil assured him that he was fine and asked the man if he had ever killed a god. If he had regained all his strength, would he be able to defeat the most powerful god in the world? Hessiad apologized, admitting that he didn't remember anything. His mind was still empty. He must have killed a god. Otherwise, why was he locked in that strange place? In any case, all gods fear the power of the primordial chaos, so one day Gil will definitely have the opportunity to kill the most powerful god. Hessiad reminded him that since the guy had used the power to kill gods, the gods would soon come for his soul, and he had better prepare. Gil simply stated calmly that he could not die here. Not only was he going to get out of here alive, but he was also going to find out what was going on here. The guy decided to start training right after the feast. Rahidler noted that Sally had asked him this for the 10th time in the last hour. Everything was ready. The orc was just waiting for Jill to arrive. The girl did not understand what the problem was, what she was asking, and decided that the orc simply felt sorry for her. After all, she was watching the cooking process, because if he screwed up, he would get into trouble. Bo-Ban threatened Rahidler so that he would not dare to offend Sally. Bruce admitted that he had never felt so good since arriving in Latona. He was going to enjoy the evening to the fullest. Ubie liked the guy's spirit. He noted that if Gil had not defeated Dorp, who knows what would have happened to them now. Bruce was sure that Gil would never lose. After all, he had seen the boy kill the king of the monsters with his own eyes. Ubie noted that the monster king Dorp was not even fit to hold a candle to him, since Dorp received his power from Hades himself. The guy almost fell out of his chair when he heard about the god of the afterlife. Seeing Bruce almost fall, Gil assumed that Grandpa Ubie was telling him scary stories. The assembled raised their torches into the sky, continuing to rejoice at the arrival of the great hero. Sally came out on stage and asked for a moment of attention. She said that now their savior, the great hero Chen-Jil, would say a few words. Ubie encouraged the guy, noting that everyone was already waiting for him, but Gil was in no hurry to go up on stage. The man decided that the guy was just worried, but Gil said that he simply did not consider himself a hero. After all, he did not save the city alone. Ubie, Bruce, Feloja, Bo-Ban, and all those people who fought for Dirks also had the right to be called heroes. Without their help, Gil certainly wouldn't have beaten Dorp. He couldn't just take all the credit. Ubie told the boy not to worry. He said that they all here knew that they were still alive only because of Gil. Now, people needed a hero who would give people hope, and the guy deserves to be one. Ubie encouraged the boy again, wanting him to be a hero who would lead all these people. He wanted the boy to tell them that they still had a chance to leave Latona. Gil admitted that Grandpa Ubie was right. After what these people had been through, they needed someone to give them hope. The boy decided that if he was going to call himself a hero, he should really be one. He had to protect them all. Having experienced what it was like to be needed, Gil admitted that he enjoyed it. Having climbed up on stage, the guy thanked everyone for their trust in him. Gil promised that he would protect them all, and they would definitely get out of Latona. Argolis, getting out of the boat, told Cecil to wait for him here, saying that he would return soon. The man was surprised that several centuries had passed, and the weather in this damn place was still so disgusting. Argolis was going to go and see Fenner's domain. The man was surprised that this idiot was actually killed. Having climbed up to Gil on the roof, Bruce noted that the guy had given a pretty good speech. It turns out, the guy wasn't afraid of the stage at all. Bruce himself wouldn't have risked giving a speech in front of so many people. Bo-Ban responded that Gil simply had no shame or conscience and had nothing to be afraid of. Gil replied that Bo-Ban was still a rude man and asked where Sally and Ubie were. Bruce only asked the boys not to quarrel every time they met and said that Ubie had overdone it with alcohol and Sally had taken him home. Feloja took food to Hicks and Lucius. Bruce asked if Grandpa Ubie had told him when they would be going to find the temple. Gil replied that he hadn't yet, but he wanted to increase his strength first. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to defeat the mythical beast that guarded the temple. Bruce didn't understand what the guy was talking about. Gil was sure that compared to the temple guard, Dorp was just a baby, so they all needed to get stronger. Jumping down, Gil announced that he was going to bed and advised the boy to go to bed early too. Bruce didn't understand what was always wrong with this guy and why he was always so mysterious. After defeating Dorpom, Gil's actual level had increased to 78, but his usable levels were only 41. He also had 65 skill points available for distribution. The level of the ability Total Destruction has increased, and now it reduces the recovery time of other abilities, which means that Gil will have to spend more mana. so now it was better for him to improve his intelligence, which was responsible for the amount of mana. Gil thought that if he added another 15 points of intelligence, it would be quite enough at this stage, and he also added 25 points of strength and 25 points of agility. The guy also needed a weapon. After unlocking access to the weapon shop, he will only have 11 levels available for use. But Gil believed that even the weakest weapon was better than nothing at all. After spending 30 levels, the guy unlocked access to the weapons store. The sword Golden Glory was quite good, although inferior to the Essel, but it cost a whole 40 levels. The enchanted sword Karthus had average stats, but Gil would benefit from its mana recovery. It restored 3% every time it hit an enemy. After some thought, Gil decided to take the sword. After spending 10 more levels, the guy received the enchanted sword of Karthus. Having taken out the key, Gil realized that now it was time for him to complete the task. The system asked the guy to come to the teleporter and said that his test would begin in 5 seconds. The system reported that Gil had entered the Crimson Dimension. The countless murders of the goddess Bastet had stained this world with blood, so much so that even the moon had turned red. The goddess's name seemed very familiar to Gil. The boy had to find the merciless Bastet before the moon set and defeat her in battle. The reward would be a legendary weapon or armor, the Amethyst Moon Key, and 10 million experience points. Gil noted that he would receive a pretty good reward. He would receive not only legendary weapons or armor, but also a lot of experience points. Thus, he would be able to significantly increase his level and buy something useful in the game store. Gil needed to find Bastet before the moon set, and the boy wondered where he should go. There weren't even any signs around, and he had no idea where to look for the goddess. Gil knew that if he went at random, he might not be able to find her before the moon set. The boy suddenly stopped, remembering the conditions of the task. Find Bastet before the moon sets. He suddenly realized where the goddess was. It was just a riddle. The phrase "before the moon sets" refers not only to the time, but also to Bastet's location. Suddenly, monstrous servants of the goddess Bastet of level 60 appeared near the guy. Seeing that all of these monsters were level 60, and there were quite a lot of them, Gil noted that the previous him would have spent a lot of effort to defeat them all. However, now for the guy it was just an easy way to gain some experience. Argolis was convinced that Fenner had indeed been killed. Of course, he did not possess divine powers, but mere mortals certainly could not have dealt with him. The man felt that everything here stank of pathetic humans. Suddenly, Argolis caught a familiar smell, not believing that the man was here. The man couldn't believe it, because he should have been killed long ago. Or he was still alive and had made some friends. The imprisonment of the evil god Morpheus is not the end of the story, but only its beginning. The appearance of Hessiad, who possesses incredible power, made the gods begin to fear humans. The seer goddess Gephion read a prophecy in a book that one day a killer of gods would appear among people. And then all the gods would be brought to justice, and a new world order would be established. The gods could not accept that the people they themselves had created could pose a threat to them, so they began to exterminate them. But people who were under the yoke of the gods would sooner or later rebel. And then the killer of the gods will lead them to defeat the evil deities. Ubie was sure that Gil was this killer of gods. Seeing the glow, the man immediately looked out the window, deciding that the barrier was attacking someone. Flying up to that place, Ubie saw a man whom he immediately recognized as the killer of Morris and Luna. Thinking that the old man was the guardian of this place, Argolis asked where the man who killed Fenner was. He promised that if Ubie answered, he would grant him an easy death.